Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your patience. When Mr. Solomon arrives, we will certainly acknowledge his presence, but in the meantime, if we will now have roll call, please.
Mayor Sanders?
Here.
Here.
Councilmember Silva?
Present.
Councilmember Johnson?
Here.
If you will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then invocation. The flag is to the rear.
Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We ask that you remain standing for the invocation. Our Heavenly Father, we come this evening with our heads bowed and our hearts humbled. We also come with our hearts filled with thanksgiving for all of the many blessings that you have bestowed on us individually and collectively. Lord, we're grateful for this wonderful city in which we live and by extension the state and the nation. Lord, we ask that you would intervene on all of our deliberations, guide us in all the things that we do, and as we deliberate, keep us mindful of those members of this community that are less fortunate than we. We also ask that as we bless this day, that you would keep us mindful of the men and women on the battlefield, those who have paid the ultimate price. We ask that you would put your arms of protection around their families and comfort them. These and all blessings we ask in thy Son's name. Amen. The City Council did meet in closed session today at 11:30. We'll have a report out from our City Attorney, Ms. Becker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On a motion by Councilmember Villegas-Walker, seconded by Councilmember Silva, the City Council met in closed session at 11:31 a.m. pursuant to the closed session statement posted with the agenda. All council members were present. A report was given to Council on the anticipated litigation item by Robert May and Norman Leffman of the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority. There is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. Council met with its labor relations negotiators, Ruben Duran, City Manager, and Terry Brownlee, Human Resources Director, concerning labor matters relating to the bargaining units listed on the closed session statement. Also present was Leticia Salcido, the Finance Director. There is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. Councilmember Silva exited closed session at 12:59 p.m. and closed session concluded at 1:13 p.m. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And the mayor's and council members' report following this meeting, I will be adding to the comments made by Ms. Becker as to some information that was the outcome of our closed session. This is a public meeting. Any person wishing to address the City Council or the successor agency to the RDA and Housing Agency is asked to complete a speaker slip and submit this to the City Clerk prior to the start of the meeting. When the item is announced and your name is called by the Mayor, we ask that you would come forward to the microphone and address yourself to the City Council. Unless the Mayor extends the time, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the City Council on any other subject matter within the Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. Any information provided on the speaker slips will be public record. Seeing no one come forward, I have no slips in front of me, so we will move forward. I have no presentations or announcements. We now have some scheduled public comments, and that will be, which is not to exceed 3 minutes. Appearing in this section to have submitted, so we would ask that Mr. Randy Taylor come forward and make his presentation on behalf of the El Centro Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, I'll see if I can keep that to 3 minutes. Well, thank you very much for allowing me here tonight. I'm here on behalf of the El Centro Chamber of Commerce, and I'm representing Sharice Alford, who is out of town and unable to be here tonight. So I'll get started. I'd like to share with you the past events over the month of April and the events for May that El Centro Chamber of Commerce is doing on behalf of the community. There was a High Desert Racing Association race held over Easter weekend. huge success. In fact, I've heard that many of the hospitalities enjoyed a great influx of businesses, and there were even some hotels or motels sold out that particular weekend. They had a successful event, and we hear that they're interested in returning again in October for a similar event. We look forward to working with them and helping them promote that event again. There was a new chamber co-op mixer on April the 19th. This was held at Ryerson Hall here in El Centro. By new chamber co-op, we mean that unlike normal chambers that are hosted by one business, this was a co-op hosted by our new members as well as President Circle members. So there's a total of 17 members hosted this event. A lot of networking, a lot of fun, a lot of activities. It, again, was a resounding success. We have this annually, and this is a new benefit the chamber provides for its new members. There was a young professionals held a seminar, and it's a leadership series, and this month it was on building high-performance teams. This was held at San Diego Gas and Electric, and it was presented and sponsored by Luis Blancarte of New Gold. We are grateful to New Gold and San Diego Gas and Electric for their ongoing support of this program as a result of they donating their time. It only was $5 for chamber members and $7 for non-members to attend this event. Applebee's had a re-grand opening. You have made notice the airplane flying between the city of El Centro and Imperial carrying banners. There was a hot air balloon for those willing and courageous enough to take a ride. Real accessible event, outstanding attendance. Anytime where there's free drinks and free food, you can guarantee it's going to be a successful event. We're really pleased that Applebee's is willing to reinvest additional monies into their business in our community, and it shows a vote of confidence for our community. Pattern Energy, Aaron Polkjoy, who is the past president of the Chamber of Commerce, attended the Board of Supervisors meeting showing support from the Chamber for Pattern Energy and the positive economic impact we expect it to have on our community. Upcoming events. There is, I forgot one. City of El Centro had a music festival. We want to congratulate you on the outstanding job. I didn't attend myself, but I understand there was a lot of fun. A lot of people attended. Very successful event. Thank you. Upcoming events, the Imperial County Film Festival. There's Film Forward with Sundance. Film Forward promotes cultural dialogue through independent documentary and narrative film, using film's unique ability to tell stories that explore universal themes to ignite meaningful conversations. Films will be shown throughout the valley, starting with the Stopman's Club in Brawley, to Cinemark, to San Diego State and Calexico. For information, more information, you can go to their website at www.filmimperialcounty.com. The entire schedule of the Film Commission is on the website. Regional Government Affairs Committee District 4 Supervisor Debate will be held in Brawley, May the 10th, at the Stopman's Club at 6 p.m. Young Professional Leadership Series continues. This time it's May the 18th on conflict management. Obviously, none of my employees will be there. Location to be announced. Young Professional Awards Dinner, May the 31st, Barcelona Event Center, 5:30 to 8:30. Our next mixer is to be announced. And last, I would like to invite you to the Chamber of Commerce Annual Dinner on June the 28th at the Old Eucalyptus Theater. The Honorable Senator Robert Huff will be our keynote speaker. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Senator Huff, he is the Republican caucus chair for our state Senate. And in addition to that, Senator Huff was born in Calexico, raised in Imperial, and a graduate of mine, a fellow graduate of mine from Imperial High School a couple years ago. So we hope and look forward to seeing you all there. That's my 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Can you tell he's representing the chamber? I mean, all of that enthusiasm. I don't know if there's any questions from any member of the council or not.
I didn't realize there was to be any questions. I was just told to present, so thank you.
Good way. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. And welcome, Mr. Solomon. Okay. You want this one or you want this one? We're going to give ourselves another 60 seconds to allow Mr. Solomon to be seated. Mr. Solomon, we're just now ready for our consent agenda. When I ask any council member if they have an item to pull, I've already had a request to pull item 12. Is there any other item for pull?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to request that we pull items 3, 4. I believe item 5 is being deferred.
Yes.
Item 9, item 10, and I note that we had a revised agreement provided to us on item 11 is all.
So you want to pull 11 as well, Ms. Walker?
No, just note for
Okay.
the city clerk that there was a revised agreement presented.
Was item 8 something, Ms. Walker, is that from Rabobank? Item 8?
I thought it was item,
You thought it was
10.
item 9 or 10?
No, it's item 10 that I asked to be
Okay,
pulled.
all right. All right. The consent agenda items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public can pull a consent item to be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. As you've heard, we've pulled 3, 4, 9, 10, 12. What's the pleasure of the body?
I'll move for approval of items 2, 5, 6.
5's been pulled.
Oh, 5
5 being
deferred.
deferred.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Approval of 2, 6, 7, 8, and 11, 13, 14.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Jackson, second by Silva. What's the pleasure of the body? Let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Item 3, please.
Item 3 and 4, I asked for to be pulled so the council could have an understanding as to services to be provided by both the Childers firm as well as Laurel Lee Hyde. Also use this as an opportunity to update the council with regard to the El Centro Regional Medical Center's search for general counsel. I did have an opportunity to speak to Mr. Green this afternoon and have an understanding of where he thinks the what my word where the stumbling point is, where the disconnect seems to be. So with regard to items 3 and 4, if we could just have the city attorney please give us maybe a little bit more information, and in particular note that the Childers firm does represent or serve as general counsel for LAFCO, so how we would avoid any conflict should he be asked to sit in on meetings where items either going to or from LAFCO on behalf of the city, how we would avoid that.
I'll start with Laurel Hyde. She is a partner in the firm Schwartz, Heidel, Sullivan out of San Diego. I have I've given you her firm resume that's on their website, and also some of the firm's practice areas, which is on their website. I am familiar with Ms. Hyde through my prior employment. She was an excellent attorney. Her rates were reasonable. She got results. And so what I anticipate forwarding to Ms. Hyde are planning and land use projects that aren't just something I can process as a usual process, something that would be a bigger project that would require more time and more research. And then with respect to Mr. Childers, what I anticipate seeing with him is sitting as basically helping the council through its meetings on days when I will not be here, when I have vacations or other calendar conflicts, which I don't anticipate happening very frequently. I think Mr. Childers' role as my backup for the council meetings will be one of just ensuring that the council is sticking to the agenda, following, the Brown Act, following Robert's Rules of Order. I don't think that he would really get into any substantive issues with the council. He would, take notes of your concerns and get back to me and say, the council needs you to look into this, these items. With respect to the conflict of interest issue, he's also general counsel for IVECA and the LTA, and he has a number of private clients. So the potential for conflict of interest could come up in a number of different ways. there's really no guarantee that there won't be a conflict of interest. And so what we will do as city staff is take each item on a case-by-case basis. We'll look at every agenda in advance, and we'll do our best to address any potential conflicts. If there's a land use issue, maybe we bump it to the next meeting. But there's also another layer of protection with respect to the conflict of interest issue, and that is Mr. Childers himself is going to have to take a look at our agendas to determine whether he has any conflict of interest in terms of the other public agencies he represents or his private clients. So I think between city staff and Mr. Childers, we will be able to avoid conflicts when he's sitting in this chair.
Do you have additional questions, Ms. Walker?
There was also a suggestion that perhaps we state specifically the insurance amounts, especially with regard to professional liability insurance. Was that going to be a modification made to these agreements?
Yes, I can do that. Did you want the specific numbers in the contract
Well,
themselves?
I think that at a minimum, we would probably want to say that he'll have, both firms will maintain statutory workers' compensation insurance. Professional liability, I think in particular, we would like to know, set a reasonable limit given what these two firms will be tasked with doing. I think automobile, something reasonable, general, commercial, probably is not as important. The one I'm truly concerned about, I'm concerned about would be workers' comp and the professional liability. And I think it may be a best practice to have the amount stated.
I'll work with the risk manager to get some appropriate numbers.
Any additional questions regarding that item?
Just one question.
Mr. Jackson?
The update. So
Mr. Jackson has a
sorry.
question, I think, regarding Mr. Childers, is it?
Yes, this
Okay.
agreement would be with Mr. Childers, not with the firm, so would he be the only representative, or could it potentially be one of his associates?
It could potentially be one of his associates. And if you'd like, I can edit the agreement to read how Laurel Hyde's is, because it says Laurel Hyde of Schwartz, Heidel, and Sullivan. I can have it say Ryan Childers of Childers and Associates, and then that would make it more clear that he could assign work to his associates.
Since he would be the senior attorney, I think that maybe that would be more, I'd have a little bit more confidence in that.
Well, I think Mr. Jackson brings up a good point. The way I read this was that the services would be provided by Mr. Childers alone. And he has some pretty young associates working with him. My comfort level would be that the contract be specifically that Mr. Childers provide the service.
Okay. Okay, then we'll leave it the way it is.
I had the same question too. It's been asked.
So is that, does that respond, Mrs. Becker has responded to all questions that were asked by Walker, Silva, and Jackson? Do you have anything, Mr. Sullivan? No, okay.
And the update with respect to counsel for El Centro Regional Medical Center, I actually asked Mr. Green, last week was the board meeting, and I asked Mr. Green on Monday at the board quality meeting if he had an update, because they did not have a personnel committee meeting in in April. And so I was curious as to why they didn't have a personnel committee meeting in April, given the fact that the attorney issue is on the front burner. What he told me last Monday was the president of the board does not believe they can make any kind of decision whatsoever with respect to what they're going to
Outside
do,
counsel?
whether it's going to be someone they retain, whether it's going to be someone they contract with, whether it's going to be a full-time employee, a part-time employee. They can't even begin to map out their model until they know what the reduction in the current assessment is that they have to pay to the City of El Centro. As an agency of the City of El Centro, the hospital pays approximately $200,000 a year to the city. And obviously there would be a reduction in that assessment given the reduction in the work, the hours that my office will put in for the hospital. I was not made aware that that was the stumbling block until Monday, so I went to Mr. Duran on Tuesday, and we have exchanged emails with the finance director. So we're going to sit down and we're going to do our cost analysis in order to get a number back to them, and we're actually going to prepare two numbers. The first being the number what it will be if the city attorney is not their general counsel, and the number what it will be if the city attorney is their general counsel.
Okay,
And-
but I
Ms.
guess
Walker,
I don't
you need
understand.
to, you have some more points for clarity?
Well, I thought the policy decision had already been made that the city attorney's office would not serve as general counsel.
Right.
I mean, the policy decision by the city council has been made that the city attorney would not serve in that capacity, so I'm wondering why we are revisiting that.
Well, it's not a revisiting. We did not know that they were waiting for some number from us. They've already gotten the direction. Council said that they're going to have their general counsel. And now they're saying, well, we're not going to do anything until we know if you're going to reduce if the city is going to propose a reduced assessment. Well, we want to provide that to them, but also we're going to establish it, should they choose not to go with general counsel and come back to you, we want to know what both numbers are. Because one of the things is, I think there's been indication is that somehow they've been overpaying, and quite frankly, this number hasn't changed in almost 15 years. Actually, it may be discounted. So we want to make sure they understood. If they don't take an action, it actually could be more expensive.
But if they don't take an action, then it will be more expensive for the city because we would have to augment the city attorney's office. So one way or another,
Well,
somebody's going to end up paying more money.
But-
The
but,
policy decision has been made for the hospital to move forward with general counsel. And so I guess I am once again expressing my frustration that we have not gotten past this point. I mean, for 6 months now, this has been an issue, and we are no closer, it sounds like, to resolution of this issue than we were when we first started talking about it back in October, November, December, when we knew that Mr. Hernandez was going to be retiring.
Perhaps.
So I would ask, Madam Mayor, that this be a continuing item on our agenda until such time as the hospital, and I would ask that our representatives to the hospital board become actively involved in getting this off center.
I leaned back to ask Mr. Silva if there had been any discussion regarding this. So, Mr. Silva,
Well,
he-
we did not have any discussion related to this at our last meeting. But I will make sure that the item gets put on the agenda for discussion again at the next hospital meeting. I did have a question, Mr. Duran, is as it relates to, reviewing the payment made by the hospital to the city and evaluating that. Does that become a decision by the city as far as what the payment would be, or how much that would be reduced, if any, or is that something that eventually gets negotiated between both entities? How the process and the protocol for that, how does that go?
This is how I believe it is. You are the parent company. You set that assessment. Just as you set the assessment for the RDA, which is actually $400,000 for the overhead, you set that. And the same thing, you're the parent company of the corporation, and they are an agency of, is in their title. We wanted to make sure that they understood when we give them the smaller number, whatever that is, they understand how we arrived at it, and not that we just started with a base number that was 15 years old. But I did not understand until last Tuesday that they were somehow waiting for this. That number can come along at any time when they're ready to do this, when they select, because the direction from the council was for them to have general counsel, not about renegotiating that. We're dealing with that in priority orders that we have other projects here that you're going to see tonight. So we said, all right, we'll pull that number together, but we're not sure why you're not moving forward with your project.
Okay.
Because they're really two separate outcomes. They're two separate issues.
Yeah, because
So-
the decision to hire counsel is not contingent on the amount of money that will be reduced by. It's
Exactly.
Right, I mean, the models, they can be moving forward with an RFP process.
right.
Yes.
all right,
Again,
now,
I'd ask that the item be agendized for the next meeting for information to be.
Well,
but we may not have it.
our next hospital board meeting won't be until
First
after.
meeting in
First
June.
meeting in June.
So, okay.
Okay.
Your hospital board meeting is what date, Mr.
It's the
Silva?
last Tuesday of the month.
Last Tuesday of the month. So the first meeting in June, we will get an update, and maybe by then there will be more clarity added so that the hospital board or the hospital administration will have some understanding as to what they need, if they need things from us, and then how to use the information that we provide for them to move forward. Okay, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of those items.
I'll move approval of items 3 and 4.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Walkers. Did you have a question to the motion, Mr. Jackson?
There was a change of language with the Childers.
Are you going back?
Insurance. We decided to leave Childers the way it is, so that Ryan is the only attorney in the firm that will be working with the city, but we need to add specific insurance limits to both
Okay.
agreements.
Okay. Are you okay?
Yep.
Okay. It was moved by Walker, second by Silver. Let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. I'm ready now for entertaining was it item 9, Ms. Walker, you wish to have a pull?
I ask that item 9 be pulled. The discussion on the agenda sheet talks about a pending issue with Caltrans having to do with establishing responsibility for the costs associated with the rock mulch, and I was hoping for an update from the Public Works
Okay.
Director as to how long we think that might take to get resolved.
Mr. Hagan, please.
I'm going to say several weeks. Where John Gay has left the city, went to the county. He was the project engineer on this, and Caltrans is actually looking for either some emails or something in writing that shows that they were responsible for the rock mulch. We're not sure. We're going to have to go back and look at that, how that got into the project.
Have we
So-
made contact
Wait
with
a
Mr.
minute.
Gay?
Have you got a chance to?
Have you?
Not yet.
Okay, and do we have a way to access, and I don't know, maybe this is an HR question or an IT question, we have a way to access his former email account?
I believe you have that, right?
We still have access to his email?
What's the age of this process? I mean, how far back are we having to go?
I believe a year.
Well, it seems to me that some of that information, when it was brought forward, should be in some hard copy somewhere in some files.
Possibly. It's going to be a process of going through everything and trying to find it.
And Caltrans says they have no recollection of that?
No. They're looking to us to come up with it.
Can you remind me, Terry, the amount that was used for the...
Almost 300,000.
Yes, a substantial amount of money.
Excuse me, 400,000, $393,000.
But they did give us an extra 135.
Yes.
No, but I think we discussed this at length, almost ad nauseum, regarding that and the responsibility and all of the nuances that went along with it. And I had hoped it had been resolved. And so what I'm hearing now is that Caltrans is looking to us to provide them the information that indicates that it should have been resolved.
It indicates that they were responsible
Yes. For the
for
cost.
the rock mulch.
Okay. Do you think you'll have something available at our next meeting? Our sec-
Possibly.
Okay.
How
So
about
let's,
Sort of pull it over to the first meeting
yes,
in June
I think
as
so.
well?
I think so.
An
Okay.
update.
Thank you.
I think so. Thank you.
With that, I'd move approval of item 9.
Second.
I'm sorry, the second was Silva? Moved by Walker, second by Silva. Is there any questions to the motion? Hearing none. Let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye. All in favor? Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Item 10 was also pulled.
I requested that the item be pulled for clarification that the project proponent has funding through Rabobank. Is that their funding source, do we know?
Yes.
Then I will abstain on item 10, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, moved by Walker, moved by Silva, second by Jackson. For item number 10, let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye. All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention, so the motion carries with 4 and 1 abstention. Okay, 12, that was your item, Mr. Silva?
I don't have a particular question. I did have a question earlier as it relates to the language that was answered by the city attorney to my satisfaction, but I just wanted to, more than anything, to thank the Community Enhancement Task Force for all the work. I know this took a lot of work, a lot of meetings.
That's the first of, we hope, many things that will be coming forward, and we need to pay particular congrats to our city attorney, who worked extraordinarily hard to get that to the point in time that it's in front of us now. So
Right.
great job, Ms. Becker.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to publicly thank all of you for this.
Okay.
So with that, I move for approval.
Second.
Okay. So it's been moved by Silva, second by Walker. All in favor, let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. I believe we have... Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're ready now. We're ready for item number 15. It's approval of the El Centro Economic Development Strategy, the addendum for the certification program, our certified program, in EIR, or for the 204 General Plan update. The General Plan Amendment number 10-01, updating the economic development element of the city's general plan. Presentation will be made by Norma Villacana, Director of our Planning Department. I don't like the way that looks. It's a glare from my
Yeah,
eyes.
it's hard. That's what I say.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayors and members of the council. The project before you is a general plan amendment for our economic development element of the general plan. If you recall, our last update of this element was completed back in 2004 under our comprehensive update of the general plan. In light of all the economic challenges that we've faced, the city has initiated a general plan amendment to update our plan to ensure that some of the issues are being addressed. In particular, specifically, some of those issues focus, the element focuses on stimulating new economic growth, revitalizing older areas, assuring public safety, finding new uses for underutilized land, and also enhancing the amenities and cultural resources that define the city of El Centro. With that in mind, what we're asking of you tonight is for 3 actions. The first action would be to adopt the economic development strategy. The second action would be to adopt the addendum to the certified program EIR for the 2000 general plan amendment. What we're doing is, because this is the EIR, after reviewing the environmental findings of this particular action, it was found that we could use the 2004 EIR and just amend it to reflect the proposed action that we're going before you tonight. And the last action would be to approve the general plan amendment. Now, we have in our audience, we have Mr. Steve Wallstrom, who's the consultant who prepared the economic development element and worked with city staff to get this document completed. So at this time, Mr. Wallstrom, if I can get this.
Terry, could you assist if you're over there?
Can you
Could you assist?
Just close that window.
Is it a PowerPoint? Thumb drive. All right. He's going to use a thumb drive. While we're waiting, I want the audience to know we have a couple of young Boy Scouts who are looking for something quite interesting tonight, so I trust you'll make this very interesting for them. They're earning their merit badges.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Good evening. My name is Stephen Wallstrom. I prepared this report, myself and my staff. It's been a pleasure working with city staff and the community throughout this. It's been going on really a year and a half. It's been, as lots of projects go, starts and stops, and this culminates at the very end. What I want to discuss with you tonight, there's a lot of information in the report. I'm not going to bury you in information, but there's really three parts to it. One is I want to just share with you a little bit of the key findings about the economy that sets the framework for the actions that the city council and staff can take to create jobs and generate income and revenue into the city. That's one. And two, I want to just briefly show you the structure of the report, so when you're interested, you can go through and you understand what all that stuff's about. And then lastly, I do want to review with you the recommended goals. And the goals are an outcome of the logic of the economic situation that we're in. So having said that, let me get started with it. There are really 5 points I want to make about what we found about the local economy. First of all, we all know El Centro has a bad rap because it's always in the national news as the highest rate of unemployment in the country. That really is unfair, but it's also a quirk of your location and the situation with binational economy here. In fact, what's really happened is that job creation has been terrific. You guys have done a great job at creating jobs. It's far exceeded the state economy and the national economy over time, and that gets buried in this constant press about the high rates of unemployment. That's one. Now, the part that's really been ignored and not been talked about, yeah, you create a lot of jobs, but you're going to see in this, incomes have dramatically declined. That's a serious problem, and that's actually one of the biggest cores of what we need to do to go forward to try to build the economy back up. Third, I know that many of you were involved in the new mall. It's terrific, and it's solidified El Centro's position in the region as a center for retail spending. But there were unintended consequences. And those unintended consequences has left behind large amounts of vacant land, vacant space, that is very problematic to fix. And lastly, your retail growth, because of what's happened to the economy in the foreseeable future, retail, which has been essentially the strategy for a very, very long time, is essentially tapped out. Yeah, there's an Olive Garden here and there to get. There's businesses here and there to get. But the great growth that you've seen in the past on retail is no longer available. And you'll see in this report why. So, wanted to say a couple things about trends, employment trends. There's 2 worlds, before the crash and after the crash, okay? Before the crash, employment growth was very strong, exceeded the state. In fact, job growth in Imperial County expanded 4 times the rate of California. Terrific. And there were 8,000 private sector jobs. Essentially, the job base expanded by 20%. That's huge between 1998 and 2007. So those are pretty important things. Now, after the crash, we lost 800 jobs, private sector jobs. But actually, as bad as it's not been as bad as it's been elsewhere. Much worse elsewhere. So before the crash, the region did really well in job creation. Since the crash, really, in relative terms, the region continues to do really well because they've been hurt less than other areas, than the state or Southern California. Now, regarding the commercial retail, the mall and the Imperial Valley Plaza, the plaza at Imperial Valley, has enhanced the position of El Centro. And now we've reached the point where El Centro captures 50% of all the sales tax revenues in the county. That's terrific. And 80% of the revenues that come into the city are brought in by people that don't live in the city. This is what every city dreams of. Okay, you get, and most of these people are from Mexicali. We don't know the exact shift, but they're from people from Mexicali and elsewhere in the valley are generating your sales tax. There are virtually no leakages left to be captured. Anything going forward continues to capture the regional spending. Again, the shift to the mall, though, has unintended consequences of leaving, particularly along Imperial Avenue, all the vacant space. Changes since 2007, as I said, the retail's in trouble because of all these factors of homeowners being underwater, job losses, and serious declines in household incomes that really affect this area in particular. There's like just 5 or 6 figures, key figures I wanted to show you that back up these points. It's really very surprising, but I got it. So that's before. This is actually not the before and after the crash numbers. This is 1990 to 2000 numbers, and then 2000 to 2009 numbers. So you can see California. I think that the blue is California. Incomes went up in the 90s. California incomes went down, 1,600. This is adjusted for inflation. And in Imperial, or El Centro, incomes went up in the 90s. But since then, incomes have just collapsed. And we've now reached a point where we are at 50% of California's household incomes. That's a pretty low number. Now, regarding taxable sales up here, so the key number here, 1.4 million for the county. El Centro gets 725, almost exactly half. And this is a chart that makes that point of 80%, 81% of the spending that comes into El Centro comes from outside the city, which is terrific. Okay? But it kind of gives you a sense of where you are and what you would need to do to grow retail any more than what you have. And there's a more detailed one of these in the report if you're interested, but I want to just point you to this column 3, spending leakages in these very general areas. Zeros. Regional capture, everything. Okay? But here, and this is the unintended consequences, the vacant space. You have about 700,000 square feet as of the end of 2010. I don't know where it is now. But these are the various centers and the vacancy rates as of the end of 2010. And then the last couple I want to point out, this is the before and after the crash. Again, taxable sales growth. This is El Centro, Imperial, and California. You see it all grew up to the crash, and since the crash, it's gone down a lot. Okay, so that's kind of sets the framework of what's going on with the economy.
I have a question, sir.
Please.
The date that you utilized to identify the crash, what was that year?
Well, it's 2008, 2007.
Okay.
It took a period of time, as you
Okay,
know.
all right.
It
But I
was
was wondering which...
2008, 2007. We kind of go back and forth as to when it really is.
Can you go back one slide, Brian?
Sure. I think I can. There we go. Thank you. No. That one?
Can you go over that again?
Sure. The bars on the top are from 2000 to 2006. So you can see, this is adjusted for inflation. El Centro taxable sales went up 7.8% between that 6-year period. County 6.1, California 2.5. Terrific growth. Since between 2006 and 2008, which is at the time, now we have 2009 data out, but there's always a lag in this economic data. But you can see the trends, it went down. 4.2, 5.2, and 4.0. It went down about the same as California. It didn't show anything dramatically different. But the factors that brought it down are really say that that growth that you've achieved in the past is just not there in the future. Okay, so now, as Norma said, this is all about one aspect of this is a general plan update. So we want to project growth so that we can plan for that growth. So that's really what this is about. So what we have here is, to let you know, we can anticipate around 17,000 new jobs to be created in the city. It's not a guarantee, it's a projection by 2025. That's a little under 15 years from now. Now, with that, most of these new jobs that will be created will be in the service sectors. And the service employees will be wanting office and business park space. In addition, much less demand, but we should plan for 500,000 square feet of new warehouse and industrial space. But only 435,000 square feet of new retail space. Now, you can actually support over 1 million square feet if the existing vacant stores are allowed to just continue be vacant and deteriorate. So retailer is always a challenge because retailers want new space. They don't want old space. And so that's a big challenge to try to figure out how to absorb this. So that 435,000 assumes that the city will be successful at getting all this old vacant space absorbed. That 700,000 square feet that's out there.
Can you go back?
You want to see that one?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm sorry. Darn it. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. There we go. Nope.
No. That one. On the second bullet, are you able to filter down what type of service sector jobs you're talking about?
Yeah. They were in one of the in the report itself, and I don't have the paper copy with you. There's a thank you, Rosie. Thank you very much. Just for your interest, it would be table A7 in the report. It would describe the kind of service-producing firms that are there, the kind of demand. So,
115.
page 115. Thank you, Rosie. So just eyeballing it here, most of them will be professional and business services, and health services is the biggest growth sector. Professional, business, leisure, hospitality would be the three largest sectors of service that are projected to grow. And we have a number in terms of how many square feet, how we translate that into square feet of space. Do you follow the, okay. Shall I go forward? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so another important point here is you have a lot of land, but actually what you have, your key planning and economic development problem, they are side by side, is you have a mismatch, which is really challenging to solve, between the kind of land that you have available and the kind of jobs that are going to be needed to be developed. Let me explain. You have, have some data to show you too. Significant oversupply of both commercial retail and industrial space, and a significant undersupply of business park and office space. And that's out of balance between the demand and supply, presents a really big challenge in this economy, which is radically changing right now. So I'm just going to, you don't have to go through these numbers, but what this says here is the oversupply of commercial space is 1.3 million square feet. In terms of the land, if you build that land out, you'd have an oversupply of land that's zoned for that. And then the undersupply of business park and office space is 2.5 million square feet. Big difference. So you really have this whole rethinking, that's some ideas about that, about how to convert some of this oversupply into where the jobs in the future are going to be.
So are you basing this on zoning? Is that what these numbers are on, based on zoning?
Well, it's based on two things: built space and available zoning, available land that's zoned.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now, rest of this until we get to the end here, I'm just explaining to you what's in the report so you can just see. There's a lot, those are all general, what I just gave you is a lot of generalities about the economy of the city. It really gets down to sites. So what we have in this for you going forward here is we've identified 16, I call them catalyst areas. And these are the areas, and they're in 4 corridors. They're along Imperial Avenue, they're the city center where the downtown is, they're the Dogwood Road, the new mall, and then the various industrial areas. These are your catalyst areas of focus when we think about economic change in the city. And there's a really good map in the report. This is the map. It shows you where they are. You can kind of see them. Some of these areas are very large. Some of them are as small as, a single site. But most of them are large to medium areas. Downtown itself is an area, downtown corridor. And in the report, you can just see, so we blow up like the Imperial Avenue corridor, and these are the 6 areas along it. And this is like it's in the report, a little summary of what these areas are all about. And then you can see also in the report, there's actually, each site says something about the site. Like this is 120,000 square feet and what the challenges are for that site. And then in the report, I don't want to go through all this, but you can see there's area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has some characteristics, so you can look at each one of these. You can see characteristics and challenges for each area. Okay, and that's it. And I want to just go through the goals here. Based on what I just articulated about the challenges and what's going on with the economy, these are the kind of goals that you want to achieve going forward when you're thinking about projects to approve that relate to the creation of jobs. I mean, in some ways they're kind of no-brainers, but I think it's important to articulate them and think about them. You want employers that pay high wages, not low wages. We have a lot of low-wage jobs in the city, so keep that in mind. Doing a great job with job creation, not a great job with jobs that have good incomes. We need to do everything we can to encourage entrepreneurship, given the situation in the economy. It will do wonders to help combat higher rates of unemployment and lack of opportunities. Sustainable development is, this county is going full out with approving renewable energy projects. That's only one piece of sustainable development. There's a whole bunch of sustainable development projects, many, that you could adopt that is the wave of other communities going forward you might want to consider. We can get into that if you're interested. You need more shovel-ready industrial and business park sites. Zoned dirt doesn't do it. You have facing significant competition with existing industrial parks that are basically ready to go outside the city. And so this is your main problem why you've not been able to been able to go forward with these sites. And as much as you have to not do anything to damage the relationship with Mexicali shoppers. You've got them, you need to keep them. And anything that damages that cross-border commerce would harm El Centro. And I think improving community amenities would go wonders. Parks, lighting, sidewalks, all of the basic infrastructure. We're almost done here. And as far as downtown, I was one of the people that did one of the earlier versions of the downtown plan before Project Shape. And where we are right now, it needs to become a neighborhood. More people there. That'll go a long way to help bring back businesses to that area. And obviously, it's easy to say, but reduce the rates of vacancies. Encourage more intensive development at the underutilized sites. And that's really an important one because what you really have there is not only large, vacant, big box spaces, but you have seas of unused parking in front that add to the bad image of the site. And upgrading the maintenance and appearance of the abandoned properties would really help. And lastly, I think this last, convert a portion of the industrial land that you have back into business park or general commercial uses. Oh, and then the Imperial Valley Commons side is particularly, it's fantastic what's happened. I was highly skeptical because, it was, the crash came and the developer went away and it was half built. Real problem. But Kohl's is there and the synergy is on that side of the freeway, so it is possible that you can get more retail there. But just keep in mind, when you get that more retail there, we still have to take care of the vacant spaces on the other side of the city. So, yes. Oh, and then just lastly, this is another one of those charts that's in the report. All these goals are over here. Then you'll see a set of policies and actions, and each of these have a geographic focus. Some of these goals don't apply to the whole. Very few of these goals apply to the entire city. They really apply to these specific areas, and only some of the areas they apply to. So anyway, there's a chart that explains all that. There's text that explains it. So you or staff or the community can go in, look at the report, see the organization of the report, and you can easily pick out what you need to do just by looking through the charts without having to, some people like to read and some people don't. So with that, I'm available for questions, and it's been a pleasure working with you all.
Are there any questions?
Could you put the slides back where you're talking about the recommendations, the ones
The
just
goals?
prior? Yes, the goals, the ones just prior to that. May I?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Silva.
I think this is great, but these are things that we've seen. A lot of these recommendations we've seen in other reports, and the very common theme across just about everything that's there is money. A lot of those recommendations that you're proposing are going to require some investment from the city.
Not all, but some. Go ahead.
Which ones would you say wouldn't require an investment?
Well, beyond what you are currently investing would be I think what you're asking, not as if you weren't investing anything. You have staff in place. So attracting employers that pay higher wages, that's a matter of focus, initiative, and effort, just like what the IBEDC has been doing. They bring prospects to the region, but it's the city's job to convince those prospects to invest in El Centro, not Brawley, not the county, not Imperial. And that's an issue of being organized and focused, but knowing also where you're going to put them, knowing your sites, knowing what you have to offer. What does the city have to sell? They have a lot of great people here, and we have a lot of dirt, but we need to understand that dirt doesn't sell. So we need to. We certainly have a lot of built space, and that built space doesn't require. That's privately owned space, and you're attracting private investment. So anyway, that one is one that doesn't necessarily require city funds above and beyond what you're currently spending. Number two, entrepreneurship chambers here. That's the forum for entrepreneurship. That is something to discuss among your small business sector. It's not really a city. It might get into city zoning, but it's more of a mentality than it is a city policy or city money. Sustainable development, you could establish, for example, I'll give you an example. This is one type of a sustainable development that is being successful. A policy that requires new commercial building, we're not getting any right now, new commercial and residential building to install solar, passive rooftop solar, not the big projects here, but rooftop solar. That's in the world of sustainability. We could look through our zoning and building regulation code and kind of reconfigure that so that we encourage homeowners to retrofit, to fix their homes up through weatherization. And I don't know what's here, but for example, I'm on a nonprofit board that's essentially does weatherization for low-income households. This construction company. So, and I don't know if you have such a thing here, actually, but that kind of entity, that's not really a city money, but it's a city initiative. Shovel-ready industrial and business park sites, this is a hard thing, period, and you have to be on top of grants, but really it's really a matter of getting the private sector in there, getting it ready to go, because the industrial parks that are in place in Calexico, the East Border Crossing, and Imperial, by and large, were not done through grants. So we can look at our competitors and how they were done. Continuing to attract shoppers from Mexicali, that's just a focus to make sure we don't do anything to mess that up.
Yeah, because I don't, honestly, I don't know that we have done anything to attract them other than there's really...
You're there.
They're
You built
here.
them all.
We built them all, and that was it. But as far as a proactive effort to attract Mexicali shoppers, I think the city of Calexico has been always very involved in attempting to increase accessibility so that people don't. If I tell you what, if we could somehow make border waits acceptable, 30 minutes or less, there would be an awful lot more people coming to shop.
Right.
As opposed to spending
Absolutely.
2 hours in line. And I think there's some efforts to, have been done, but this Calexico has done, I think, a better job than we have in terms of being involved at that regional level.
You're right, but you have done, don't forget, El Centro has succeeded far beyond what Calexico has by the fact that you built them all. And it's, in this case, it's and if you build it, they will come. So this goal here really isn't one saying spend money, do anything to attract Mexicali shoppers. It's only don't mess it up. You got something great going here, and maintain that.
Now, Calexico just broke ground for their new outlet center, which is not a mall, but I think is going to definitely have an impact.
Sure.
On our mall.
They're jealous. They want some of that share. They see the numbers too. You're absolutely right. But anyway, these first 6 here, I just went through them. They aren't necessarily, your point is absolutely, your point that we don't have any money, we the city, we recognize that when it went through this. It's not pie in the sky. So wanted to really think through what it is you can do. Redevelopment's gone away. That just took all this money away from the city. That's what it did. So, so these goals here are goals that can be achieved by actions of staff and council and the community at large without massive public investments.
Well, the reason why I made my observation and as I looked at that list is, for example, today we have an item on the agenda of a business that wants to open, and they're asking for some assistance. Historically, when large employers or high-paying jobs,
right,
will look at, they'll make communities compete against each other for the location, and many times that involves providing some level of assistance. That's where I saw some dollar signs in my head kind of come up with that.
Well, you're right. And that business that you're entertaining today, if you said to them, we don't have any assistance that we can give you, but we can give you a good site, we can give you permits, we can make ease a transition, they might say, well, I'm going to go over like Imperial and see if they'll give us any money. And it's reality. So it's a decision that you have to make. You have to understand how attractive is your site for that business. And I think you probably, knowing the business, you have the site, despite what they might say elsewhere. So you got to keep in mind what is your position. It's a negotiation, as you know.
Just one last question for me for right now. In your report, you do make an observation on the high level of unemployment rates, and you make a connection to the numbers, which I've always believed are really inflated, but they're inflated because of the Mexicali.
Right.
Are you able to elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I'll try to make it simple as possible. Citizens of Mexicali can come to this side and work, and they're counted as by the Bureau of Labor Statistics as employees. And when, for whatever reasons, so it inflates the labor, the statistical analysis inflates the labor force to include these people. They are employees, but what it says then is that there's an unemployment rate associated with there's a mismatch here because
It's inflated because they anticipate the unemployment rate is reflective of the residents of this community and not necessarily of our neighboring state, which is Mexicali.
Yes.
Therefore, it does give that skewed view.
Yes.
And I think that we've been trying to overcome that for some time, and we've not had any measure of success.
Yeah. My suggestion there is, without spending any money in these days of internet, is how a staff person monitor those negative reports. They've gone away for a while, I've noticed. But when they come out, get on it and challenge it.
Well, okay. In that regard,
I mean,
I think
that's all you can do.
No, I think our staff has been very proactive in that regard, and we've had many meetings with the media, whether it's national or local, or either the media of the state, trying to get them a more holistic view of what's really happening in this community and more importantly in this region. But as it relates to what we do here to attract, I think, the Mexicali shopper, we have quite a few cultural events here that appeal to that particular individuals. And also the ICTC, Imperial County Transportation Commission, working along with SCAG, have been actively involved in trying to do things on that border to open up those passages so it will be a little easier for individuals to cross. I think Ms. Walker could speak to that. We just had that regional workshop on how do we do things. So there's been some movement in that direction. But we haven't certainly turned a blind eye to what we are trying to accomplish here and continue to keep El Centro in a competitive position. So I think we appreciate this. Unless there's any other questions, Ms. Walker, you have some questions? You have some questions?
A number of the economic development goals, I think, have at least touch on housing, because if we want to attract new business, if we want to enhance quality of life, if we want to change usage from commercial to residential. Is there anywhere in your report, or can you offer us an opinion as to the housing stock within the city of El Centro, and whether or not you believe that there are changes that should be considered by this council to augment the economic development strategy from a housing standpoint? That's question number one. And number two is, I'm wondering, SCAG is in a period of a lot of studies, both for the regional transportation plan and for the regional housing needs assessment. Have your numbers with regard to job growth and square footage, future needs, have those been trued up or evaluated based on the data available from SCAG? So those would be my two questions, please.
Those are two very different questions. Let me start with the housing. I can't tell you about the specifics of the housing stock or the housing conditions in El Centro, other than it's obvious to try to create more residential space in the downtown corridor.
Okay.
But what we have on the region, and I've done some recent work and analyzed this, and it's sad to report it, is nearly 50% of the homeowners in the county are underwater. So if a person is underwater, as I'm sure you know, friends and family that may very well be, you're not in the housing market. Your potential to foreclose, your potential to walk away, you're stuck. And so this is really, now in addition to that, we have roughly, including in El Centro, 18,000 lots that are fully serviced and approved around the county, ready to be built. But that really, and one more thing, 2,000 lots that were basically abandoned with street sidewalks and all of that investors can come and pick up for a quarter or fifth of the price. So with that kind of situation, we've got a long way to go before we can see a future where their housing starts begin. And that would affect El Centro like every other community here. So it's a real hole. The hole is national. The hole is deeper here. Unfortunately, that's the housing. The question you asked about SCAG, yes, absolutely. We looked at the SCAG. The logic of this here is, first of all, there's a projection of employment growth.
Right.
And then that's translated into land demand.
Right.
Using a model, a SCAG model. Actually, it's a study from SCAG to use the model. And compared that with SCAG, employment growth. So SCAG is much more aggressive. They project higher rates of growth than either the historical numbers do or EDD do.
Okay.
So we went through that with staff, and this is a pretty high number already. It feels high right now to say you're going to get 17,000 jobs. I have to say that.
Seems ambitious.
It seems that way. But I think it's good to plan and be over plan, if anything, than to under plan it. So anyway, that's the answer. Wasn't an attempt to coordinate with SCAG. They've got their own system.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Jackson?
I just have one question regarding the to continue attracting Mexicali shoppers. I tend to believe that that's more of an industry. I mean, the retail industry certainly markets to the Mexicali Valley to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But you spoke of us not screwing it up. Can you give me an example of something that, from a policy standpoint, where a city would make maybe a misstep that could maybe jeopardize that relationship?
Not plan the infrastructure around the mall so that it creates further traffic gridlock problems. Not plan that correctly. I think you're doing a pretty good job, although there's a lot of complaints I've heard over the years about that freeway overpass and the on-ramp and on-ramp. I don't know how much that affects Mexicali shoppers. It probably affects Imperial Valley shoppers more. The mix of businesses going in there seems to be pretty good. You know, there's nothing out there, I'd say, that's really a red flag. The biggest red flag out there is binational relations. That's the one to watch out for. If anything happens where we go to the next step and start closing down the border even more, that's really, I would say, biggest red flag. It's not really City of El Centro or local policies. It's let's keep this situation calm.
And can I just add to that? I think that the mall understands who the primary customers are.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that they do a good job from a business point. When I go to the mall, just about every store that I go to the mall, when I walk in, I get greeted in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Because the probability is that I will be coming from Mexicali. So I think and I know that upsets a lot of people, and you know, I'm not one of them, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's one of the efforts that the mall makes to keep that Mexicali shopper content.
It's a smart move.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to follow up on that. One of the things, I believe it was an editorial piece in the local newspaper, that there have been different initiatives locally to emphasize the importance of shopping locally.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was the newspaper that made the observation that if that same message was broadcast in Mexicali, saying, look at all of the money that you are moving out of Mexicali
Mm-hmm.
and into the Imperial Valley that's no longer generating, you know, sales tax or something to benefit us, that could actually backfire if they start saying, well, wait a minute, we really should be keeping our tax dollars here as opposed to our sales dollars here.
They'd be swimming uphill on that one.
And they just had I don't know if it was the Mexicali Chamber of Commerce or they had a concerted effort to try to keep the choppers out there, and it's just not going to happen. The prices, the amenities. I mean, it's a completely different world. But I think the Calexico outlet is going to hurt.
Yeah.
Mr. Solomon.
All I wanted to say was that since Mr. Silva has been on the city council, one of the things that he has done, and I think he's done quite well, is to tie the culture of Mexicali in closer or in tune with the Imperial Valley and El Centro in particular. He has made it a point to step out and bring that culture into the Imperial Valley with different performances, things at Stark Field, the old post office, Cannon, auditorium over at Southwest. So I think if we can continue along those lines and increase that, I think we have a very good chance of holding on to those people.
Yeah, you definitely have a good chance of holding on to those people.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, I'm sorry? No additional questions? Sir, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
this.
It's been a
I want to
pleasure.
thank staff and commend them for their efforts as well. There's 3 recommendations here. So what's the pleasure of the body after hearing these? I'm sorry. Oh, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak on either side of the issue, please come forward at this time. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing and turn it back to council for their either adoption. What's the pleasure?
I'd move for approval of resolution number 12-52. Resolution of City Council of City of El Centro approving the El Centro Economic Development Strategy.
Yeah, okay. Moved by Walker, second by Jackson. Let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Item B, please.
Move approval of resolution number 12-53, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro adopting the addendum to the Certified Program Environmental Impact Report for the 2004 General Plan Update Project, Economic Development Element Update to the city's general plan.
Second.
Moved by Walker, second by Jackson. All in favor, let it be known by the usual sign of voting, which is aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Item C.
Move approval of resolution number 12-54, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro approving General Plan Amendment number 10-01, updating the city's economic development element of the general plan, as well as modifications to the implementation program that supports the element, and declaring same to be the first general plan amendment for calendar year 2012.
Second.
Moved by Walker, second by Jackson. Let it be known, those in favor, let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Does anyone need a small
Can I
break?
just make a couple
Sure.
of observations? I'd like to see if staff, I don't know if Rosie or Norma, is it possible to get I'm sure you have a bound copy with, to get one sent to me? And 2, when will we look at this again as an update on the implementation plan? A year, 2 years? When do we go back to see how we're implementing this?
There's no set schedule. However, depending on the economy or depending on the council's desire, it can be initiated at any time.
In the strategic planning process, quite frankly, the Economic Development Department will be utilizing this document. And that's why we needed to have this document to start from. And it has to be a living document. For example, one of the fundamental issues on jobs, it has been the position of the council over at least the last decade, is that jobs are a regional issue. So it is very much our interest that jobs show up in Bureau County as opposed to showing up on the corner of Ross and Pick Street. Is that we want to see those jobs come to this county because it improves the overall health of the county, which is in the benefit of the city. And also, very large projects will go out to the Keystone project area, the Mesquite Lakes. So part of this is it's discussing our element, and we're going to be looking at that to develop our policies, particularly with loss of redevelopment agency funds and other restraints. But keep in mind that we also have a regional approach that has been very successful. As indicated, there's no leakage. Well, it's because those home buildings and those jobs that are created also in Brawley or in Calexico are also showing up here, and it's benefited us for the last decade. So we'll keep that in mind.
Well, I also believe, Mr. Duran, that we might want to shift focus. And I say that based upon this report. While those jobs, quote-unquote, the good-paying jobs, seem to be going to some of our neighboring cities, so I'm not opposed to the regional approach as long as we can have some land mass that might make it more attractive for individuals to locate here. I trust that my colleagues will concur with that. So perhaps periodically we might think about how we want to attract certain types of jobs. Now, we know that, looking at the report, that most of the jobs are going to be in the service sector. So we need to get beyond that because, unfortunately, the service sector positions are not usually those that have higher paying wages. So now we need to look at something else.
I wonder if what we do with this report is extract it and turn it into a strategic plan. I mean, you had requested a copy of this, but maybe what we do is to keep with the spirit and intent, which is to turn it into a living, breathing document that's subject to modification and change, that instead of just repeating what we have here already, do the modifications internally, turn it into a strategic plan that we can then, assign different departments or groups or recognize the community groups that we're going to partner with, put in some timelines on when we're going to judge performance and maybe some key measurements as to how we can decide whether or not we're being successful with those strategies.
Is that something you want staff to take into consideration as they look at this from an updated?
I think it'd be
okay.
That's a given. All of your policies drive that. So every policy that you're adopting, the reason we're here for this is so we can develop implementation plans.
Okay.
Because to develop without that, well, then we're just going in random directions.
Okay. All right. This, I think, Ms. Caldwell, did we approve this? We did. Okay. Yes. Thank you. We're ready now for item number 16, and I think I was at that point, I was looking at my watch, wondering if anybody needed to have any short break. So I see a nodding of the head. So at that, we will take, how much, 3 minutes is satisfactory?
Take a 5-minute break and come back in 10.
3 minutes, Mr. Silva. 3 minutes. We'll have a short break in 3 minutes. So we'll resume back in 3 minutes. If you want to stand and stretch. I don't know if I gave logistics as to where they might find... Where's the bathrooms? I think the restrooms are outside to the right. If anyone needs to use the ladies' room, they're outside to your right. Yes, always a pleasure. Thank you. It's been a while. I do remember. It's been a while. But,
I'm sure there may be questions.
So,
One thing to clarify is on
the service jobs?
No, I left early. So I just had a
Can I see that little goodie bag?
so it's been another hour on Thursday. So we'll make it up then. It's 5:45 to 7. Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah,
Those are retail.
Dynamics.
Kind of want a little bit of everything?
Engineering course. This is the first time. They were teaching statics. Frank Fiorenzo was teaching statics.
What you need to do, that's not
And so they're trying to do an engineering, get it going. Well, an engineering course is not even. I don't think there's enough interest in the engineering program over there. So I don't think they're going to keep it. But it's not easy teaching a class, working. Yeah. Oh, okay.
all right.
Are you done with this?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I had to relearn it. I mean, I have taken dynamics 12 years, 13 years, so I had to kind of relearn it and then teach it. So it was a double whammy for me. But it's almost over. One more week. Why did you do this? Well,
Yeah, it is passing.
I mean, if it wasn't
Right. No, it is passing. But change is inevitable, right?
Yeah, change is inevitable.
Only certain years.
There's a lot of
I should.
water usage.
Staff has to know how to reach.
So it's the best to look into it. So if they have any Oh, you're doing it. There's one at least 2 hours.
Get that group doing their evaluation.
Tastes good. Can't even take care of yourself no more.
Food is tasty though. I'm glad he called it. It's great. This is a restaurant time to sit down and have. We'll just scoop it and taste it. That's okay, just leave it there. Don't worry about it. Yes. So just kick it over. And just try to mash it. And you have no problem. You try to do they feel they've got those kids, do they feel they've got enough information? Those young people, do they feel they have?
Wait, I told them to hang in there. We'll be there.
That's pretty bad.
We are getting
I bet you are. I bet you are. I mean, do people understand if they can't show up at the door?
No. I mean, when I feel like
I haven't shown it to you yet.
thank you. It's so easy to sneak into.
Whatever works.
You're not going to get a meal, but you can watch what's going on, right?
Or you could get it. But you're deviating that.
Sound like quite an experience here.
Well, you know,
I have to leave in Hollywood tomorrow at 10:30, so I'm driving up to Banning tonight. I'm going to spend the night in Banning, and then I'll finish the rest of my drive tomorrow morning. That's what my husband said. He goes, do you have a screenplay or something you haven't told me about? An audition? No, it's the Legal City Attorney Conference, and the new the reason that I need to be there right is it's the new city attorney's section starts at 10:30, and I do not want to miss that one. So.
However, you're going to doing things, but no, I think that would be all right.
Okay, because I'm thinking, there's really nothing legal in the budget, so, and everything left is information. Yeah, just to get permission to start the 218 process. Again, we're talking about, yeah, and then everything else after that is just pretty much. Okay.
So I told you. The chamber and bottom line. You guys will support your stockers. We need to find people that do that withdrawal. She did say that body language something that she didn't like that. She told me non-official checklist.
Well, she's not happy with you. Right. She's not happy because of
Yeah, but I could have been for that. I could have said, well, you know what, this year we
next time. Yeah,
want to
next
give
time.
somebody else a chance.
I'll make sure I have better communication. I'm moving. You're moving? Yeah. I'll make sure I maintain better communication with you.
Oh, it's going to be a lot.
There's a 3-minute break with a 15-minute reconvening.
It's about 6 or 7. Don't talk with your mouth full.
Steve performed a wedding
What?
when Terry and Les got married, guys.
The council is ready to reconvene.
How fun will that be?
The council is reconvening, and all are present and accounted for. We're ready for item and new business. Item 16, discussion and any necessary action regarding wastewater rate adjustments, and we're going to set a public hearing. Mr. Hagan, please.
Thank you. This presentation will cover both items 16 and 17,
All right.
water and wastewater.
There's no problem with opening them both up at the same time, is there, Mr.?
These are not public hearings. These are not-
No, it's to establish.
Yes.
I didn't say, I said to establish.
And
At
this,
least I thought that. Thank you for,
tonight's presentation is simply just to initiate the 218 process, which is a 45-day minimum process. And on June 19th, I'll come back and go into detail into the rate study that you have there. You have a copy of that already. So basically, you have the next 6 weeks to review the report and ask any questions. And the report was prepared by Dynamic Engineering and input from both the City Finance Department and Public Works Department. Questions on the report, I would suggest that you email me, and I'll copy the consultant, the Finance Department, and we'll get together and formulate a response. About a half a dozen people worked on this report, so I wanted to include everybody on responses and questions. So if you have any questions, I'll get together, we'll respond to those, and I'll copy all the council members, city manager, and city attorney. Okay, why do we have a 218 hearing? State law requires that property owners have the ability to vote on all new taxes and fees. Water and wastewater fees are identified as fees that must be voted on. A protest vote must be conducted before any increase can be implemented in fees. And if you have more than 50% of the property owners in the protest vote, then the fee cannot be implemented. Okay, why is a rate study needed? Well, we need to evaluate the financial health of the water and wastewater funds. Need to identify funds needed for new regulations, loan obligations, city financial goals, and to provide stability for the rate payers, the residents. Tentative schedule we have tonight. We authorize the beginning of the 218 process. We'll set a hearing date of June 19th. This gives us till May 6th to get the mailers out start the process. And June 19th, we come back and review it. At that time, I'll do a detailed presentation on the rate study. And then July 1st would be when the first rates change would occur. The notification process between now and the 6th of May, we'll have to send out a mailer to all the residents. And then between now and then, we'll have newspaper articles, radio, a city website will include information in the report, and we'll hold a workshop between now and then as well.
Mr. Hagan, can I ask a clarifying question either for you or the city attorney? So this notification process, if it goes only to property owners, and then only property owners are allowed to vote or to protest. Yeah. So if you are a renter, or if you live in an apartment, by definition you're a renter, you do not have a protest vote as part of this process.
But the letters will go out to the mailing address of the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But if it's noticed in the paper, we would hope that those who feel they may wish to register their concerns and voice some opposition, even though they're not eligible to vote, they can come and speak to the issue.
Yes.
So, people that own apartment complexes, do they get one vote per property?
I would yield to the city attorney on that question.
People that own apartment complexes, is it one vote per property?
No, actually, I'm looking it up right now, and I misspoke. The tenants would have a right to protest.
They would, okay.
Yes.
The tenants would?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just pulled it up right now.
Thank you.
But if the notice is only being mailed to property owners, then how do the tenants become aware?
Is it protest, or is it, they can voice protest, but are they eligible for voting, the tenants?
Well, we'll have to include all the water rate payer addresses as well.
Well, and the water rate for example, apartments, they don't typically would receive a water bill because
they wouldn't.
Well,
this
has become an issue recently, Mr. Duran, and I believe you may have been copied on the email from the tenants, the apartment complex tenants, who the owner of the complex had recently transitioned from a master, were included in your rent, to breaking up that cost and adding it to the cost of their monthly rent. And so the tenants are saying, well, now that it doesn't seem to be fair because I don't use the pool or I don't use the laundry room, and if it's just my wife and I, how can they say that my water usage is X compared to the two-bedroom apartment next to us that has four people in it and that sort of thing. So I think that it does impact renters, and so I am curious as to how they will become aware of this issue, and number two, whether or not they can or cannot protest.
The other question regarding that is that 50% threshold, that's based on whom? Then if both property owners and tenants can vote, then what is 50% of whom?
I believe it's about approximately 10,000 people, so we'd have to have 5,000.
No, but what I
Who
think
votes?
is the property owner or the tenant. See, and while Mrs. Becker is saying the tenant would have the opportunity to protest, that doesn't clarify for the council whether or not that protest could ultimately, by extension, mean they can vote in protest, or they can just come and voice their opposition.
It says, in Proposition 218, it says that if a tenant of a real property is directly liable to pay an assessment, that tenant would have the right to protest and vote.
Protest and vote, if they're paying an assessment. So that speaks to the concerns that Mrs. Walker has.
Well, not exactly, because what if it's a proportion of a total bill that's being allocated by, say, a third-party vendor hired by the landlord to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like a property owner, a property manager?
Yes.
Okay.
And if something has a 50%, if something has a ratio, that means that there's a denominator.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Right? What's the denominator?
I believe it'd be the number of services.
Residential
But then
and commercial.
renters, where you have a master meter that renders, that would add additional numbers. But again, you'd have to, I think the real thing here is you'd have to approach the 50% threshold, which we've never
When is this
approached that.
scheduled to come back?
But again, I'm trying to capture in my
When is
mind
this scheduled to come back?
what's the denominator. If it's
June
if it's
19?
10,000 dwelling units
Well, then
Or
let's-
meters.
let's hold
or
June
meters,
19.
if you
June
have
19, we should have answers.
if you have a house that has a meter,
Mhm.
and that's part of the denominator number,
Correct.
but that house is rented, will both the property owner get a vote and the tenant get a vote?
It would be one address, one parcel.
And who does the notice go to?
Property owner.
Part of the voting process would be to put down the address if we have duplicate addresses, and it's one single dwelling unit, R1, and it would be one vote.
In simplistic form, let's take the example, is what our city attorney is looking at, and we'll actually get definitive more information out to you. She can actually write a report, but it's the one vote. So if the tenant is paying the water bill, the tenant, as we understand, gets the vote. If the landlord is paying the water bill, the landlord gets the vote. There's not two votes on one property, because otherwise, if, for example, let's say a homeowner would only get one vote, the rental property doesn't get two, it gets one.
But we won't know.
How would you know that, though?
You
How
won't,
would you know
because if
that?
I'm getting the mail and I'm a renter, but I'm not paying the bill,
We're not going to get it.
but I vote no.
Right. Well, part of that evaluation is, with the clerk's office, is to, like any vote, is to determine that these are justified votes. For example, if Ruben Duran votes and it's noticed on that he's not a he's not a property owner and he's not on the water billing system, then that vote's going to question.
The vote should be voted.
I get that, but what's confusing for me is the issue on the tenants.
Yeah, now if you get into 20, let's take 20 tenants. That's the part that I do not have an answer. I think we need to send out back to you a report from the city attorney about how we deal with the multifamily units.
Right.
But again, it comes in those situations outside of mobile home parks. It's pretty rare that they're paying the water bill.
As I understand 218, it's the property owner.
Right.
Doesn't matter if he's got 20 tenants or 50. It's the property owner. However, those tenants have the option of coming forward and protesting. I don't know that they would actually have a vote. They have a voice, but not a vote.
And we would
is it
send that
weighted?
back to you
Is
to
it
confirm
weighted?
that it's the property.
If you're a property owner that has a, like I said, 20 complex, a 20 apartment complex, as a property owner, and let's say the tenants aren't paying the water bill, the property owner is, does that property owner have one vote, or does he have 20?
He has one. He has one vote. He's the parcel. It's the
So
parcel.
it's one ballot per meter.
No, it may
Is
be
that a
more than
good
one
way of
meter
saying
on
it?
there.
One ballot per meter.
The 218 process is not a water fee proposition, it's a parcel-based tax.
It's
So
parcel.
it goes to the parcels. So
It's a parcel.
when we were applying this 218, where you didn't see this in 2006, a lot of things have evolved on the Prop 218. So that's why this seems to be like new ground. It is, but recall, it's a parcel-based tax, not that covers a lot of things. And when they pass this, they focus just in on the parcels. And she's reading through that now. I think the biggest thing for us is, we're asking is that we set the date, but we also provide you with that information so you know how this is going to work. Because we thought we understood it, but clearly we're still working through it.
Yeah, I think we need to get some work, because if it's based on parcels, then who gets to set that vote on behalf of that parcel?
Well, under the 218 hearing process, the law requires that we notify the parcel owner.
The amount of the
Here we go,
proposed
thank you.
assessment for each identified parcel shall be calculated, and the record owner of each parcel shall be given written notice by mail of the proposed assessment, the total amount thereof chargeable to the entire district, the amount chargeable to the owner's particular parcel, the duration of such payments, the reason for the assessment, and the basis upon which the amount of the proposed assessment was calculated.
Now, the property owner may choose to make some kind of formula to decide how much the rent will be elevated based upon his share, a prorated share of the cost. But it's the property owner, and for that parcel of land.
The additional items clearly is, one is we're having this meeting to set the hearing, so public's finding out about it. We're taping this, and that'll be on our website. But also, we're talking about newspaper, our website, our Facebook accounts, additional notification of that going out, publicizing the public hearing process.
Well, we'll do everything we can to make sure the information is disseminated to as broad as we possibly can and as deep as we possibly can, so that all individuals, whether they are renters and or property owners, will be adequately informed so that they then can come and register their concerns, either pro or con, once the public hearing is established, the date and time.
So
Mr. Jackson.
let me muddy the water a little further.
Okay.
What if, we certainly have a lot of foreclosures currently. So then, by default, then the banks or whoever has control of that parcel now becomes a voting.
A voting block.
We will notify whoever is on the record, and that is up to, that record could be ABC Bank, and they may have sold the property somewhere during this period of time. It may or may not get to them, but we're going to adhere to the Proposition 218, and we're not rewriting it. And that's the challenge when you have these, when they establish this Prop 218.
It's a little scary. It is for me. Has any other community gone through this process already, and what the outcome was?
Actually, this process was in place in 2006. What you didn't have was this meeting to say we're going to have a meeting.
Right.
What happened last time we had the meeting, we went through all these items. Individuals had the 60-day, I think it was 60 days.
45 days.
45 days after the public hearing, and then you implemented the rates. The only difference is you're now discussing this before the public hearing. And that's been a slight modification of interpretation of the 218 process. So you actually did this before, and there were folks who came and spoke, and including the building industry folks, and then you adopted it back in 2006. So the process that we're describing has not changed. This meeting is what's changed.
Well, what's changed is we put this on the front end to establish the time frame for the public hearing.
And in the June 19th presentation, I'll include the rates we did back in 2005 and what they were as compared to this. And as Ruben mentioned, we had the Building Industry Association, but that was because we had the capacity fees. This time we're not trying to change the capacity fees.
Okay. And if there's any points of clarification, Ms. Becker, would you please try to, I don't know how you can condense 218, it's quite elaborate, but the best you can, and when we come back at the public hearing, just have something for us.
The League of Cities has a good white paper on that.
Yes.
We'll get that forwarded.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Mr. Silva?
Terry, on the wastewater report,
Yes.
we have a proposed 6.2%
Every year.
increase. How do we come up with 6.2? What's the baseline for that?
Well, it's included in, the study includes all the issues as far as financial input, the amount of savings we need for any issues that might come up, construction, staffing, everything. So, I mean, the report.
So based on expected increases of cost,
Correct.
what you're saying is we need to increase 6.2% for the next
5 years.
5 years in order to keep up those expected increases.
Right.
Okay. And for the water, it was 3 point something? Or
4.6, I believe.
4.6.
And we'll get into detail. On June 19th, I'll present all the issues and how each one of these things factored into that.
Okay. Any additional questions for Mr. Hagan?
And you're certainly welcome to email me with any questions, too, as well, and we'll respond to those and copy everyone.
Ms. Becker will provide us some information, and perhaps on the date that we established, which is June 19, for our public hearing, as it relates to Proposition 218. And if there's nothing else, what's the pleasure of the county? Excuse me, of the council? Is it go ahead? And move staff's recommendation for June 19th as a public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Jackson, second
Second.
by Solomon. It's been moved by Jackson and second by Solomon. All in favor, let it be known by your usual sign of voting, which is aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Okay, I think,
Did that cover 16 and 17?
yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Ms. Walker?
I'm gonna keep this so it does not have to be reprinted for me.
That was for 16 and 17. Okay. Where am I? If I can get my agenda here. 16, 17, going on 18. Discussion and any necessary action regarding the consideration for financial participation in the development of an Olive Garden restaurant within the plaza at Imperial Valley, located at the southern corner of Dogwood Avenue and Dannenberg Drive. Mrs. Piedra?
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Very pleased to present to you a project that has been discussed with city staff since the beginning of this year. We were approached by Darden Restaurants Incorporated, which is the parent company of Olive Garden, Red Lobster, Longhorn Steakhouse, and other restaurants, to consider a possible reimbursement agreement for their proposed project, which is the construction of a new Olive Garden at the Plaza of Imperial Valley, which is located at the southeastern corner of Dogwood Avenue and Dannenberg Drive. They have demonstrated an interest in locating and constructing a new Olive Garden as presented in the staff report that's before you. They intend to construct a 7,500 square foot building to accommodate the Olive Garden restaurant. The actual entity that would be responsible for engaging in this reimbursement agreement, should this council authorize such agreement, is N&D Restaurants Incorporated, which operates as Olive Garden. The proposed reimbursement for consideration is $133,000 with a term of 3 years, and basically the justification for this reimbursement agreement relates to those fees that the city would collect from this project due to its development. The total project, as included in your summary report, represents an investment by the company of approximately $3.1 million. We have the potential of creating 60 new full-time jobs as a result of this new restaurant going into the plaza, with wages ranging from $20,500 to $62,000. I want to mention that we do have representatives from Darden Restaurants that are available to answer any questions related to the particular development. They have also provided, which is attached to your report, a presentation and information related specifically to Olive Garden. What I would like to point out is, as you heard from our consultant that worked on the economic development element, there's certain policies, recommendations that are that were given and included in this report for city staff and obviously this council to consider. I want to tell you that this project is an example of having city staff work with the property owner, the Rust Group, and also Darden Restaurant Company, which is proposing this project. When we initially looked at this project, the fees, the anticipated fees for that project to come in were approximately reaching the $400,000 level. However, in working with engineering, with planning, with the building department and our department, we were able to look at those fees and they were reduced to $185,000. When we get this type of request, which is no different than when we were considering requests through redevelopment reimbursements, is we send it off to a consultant to do a financial gap analysis. And we do this to make sure that there's no gift of public funds, and to make sure that the financial gap that the project proponent is indicating to us does in fact exist. And so that's what you see in this proposal in this project, is that staff worked with Kaiser Marston Associates, which are known throughout the state of California for providing this type of financial analysis. Their report as to the financial assistance warranted for this project is attached also for your information. And as you can see from their report, the financial assistance is warranted. And the reason being is we're looking at obviously the construction cost, which part of the construction cost for this project include some demolition work. Also, obviously, the fees that are incurred, even though they were reduced, they're still representing higher than expected fees for the company. And so that is the also part of the justification for the company requesting this reimbursement from the city. In line with what, again, the consultant presented to us, this is a project also where the city has an opportunity to work with Darden and also the property owner to reduce the amount of vacant space available at the plaza. As you saw it from the report that was presented, this is an area, one of those opportunity sites where we're looking to develop uses for that site. This is, again, is a project that fits into that. To give you that information, on page 3 of your report, the overall shopping center, the plaza, has approximately 370,000 square feet. Approximately right now, 43,000 square feet are vacant. With the opening of the Olive Garden, the shopping center will have approximately 361,000 square feet with only 25,000 remaining vacant. What the essential elements of this reimbursement agreement is that we would ask that you give us the ability to provide this reimbursement to Darden. What we anticipate collecting in terms of fees, and this includes building permit, development impact, and utility fees, to be around $133,000. The maximum term of this agreement would not exceed 3 years, and the actual reimbursement to N&D Restaurants would be 120 days after their official opening date of the restaurant. N&D Restaurants agrees to create and maintain up to 60 new full-time equivalent jobs at the premises during the term of the agreement, which would be 3 years. And to qualify for that reimbursement, they would have to provide evidence to us that those 60 jobs, full-time equivalent jobs, have in fact been created. And those are what we see as the essential terms of that agreement. Obviously, as we start putting together the agreement, again, should this council authorize us to proceed with that, there would be other elements, but what I have just described for you would be the essential ones for the agreement. Therefore, due to the anticipated economic benefits, employment opportunities, and obviously proposed development out at the plaza, we ask that council consider the city of El Centro entertaining this reimbursement agreement with N&D Restaurants. Again, there is representation from Darden Company. They flew in to our city to obviously be present for consideration of this item. So if there's any questions related to the staff report or just any questions regarding the project, we're more than welcome to answer those questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mrs. Piedra or any questions from the Darden individuals?
I have a question for
Okay, Mr. Jackson.
the $133,000, which is the projected sales tax revenue over 3 years for the city. Does that take into account any redistribution of sales tax that may be lost from, say, like restaurants that would certainly have some impact by having an Olive Garden come in and say Johnny Carino's, Grasso's, Cincinnati's, like restaurants. So there's obviously going to be some kind of redistribution of sales tax. So is that taken into consideration in this number?
No, the $133,000 that I point out that we would be collecting in the next 3 years is basically new revenue as a result of the opening of the restaurant. That's what we have projected based on their sales projections, and obviously also verified by our consultant, Kaiser Marston. That would be new revenue that we anticipate receiving from the restaurant itself. No analysis was done as far as what potential reduction we could see from the other restaurants that we have in town.
But I think that there could be clearly a correlation between those numbers.
You could probably see some impact.
Okay. Any additional questions, Mr. Jackson? Mr. Silva, and then Ms. Walker, you had a question as well? Okay, Mr. Silva, and then Ms. Walker.
Marcela, on the your statement earlier on page 3 of the report on the job creation, am I reading too much into this, or perhaps is there a typo? It says, and the restaurants agreed to create and maintain up to 60 new full-time jobs. I read that into, that could be anywhere from 1 to 60.
And the reason why we put that number in there also to show some flexibility, but the company, and I'll allow them to, the representatives from Darden to speak to that, they're pretty confident that they're going to be able to create and maintain those 60 full-time positions. And so maybe the language, the way it's written here, but we do foresee seeing that job creation potential from the restaurant, and perhaps I'm going to allow them at this time to provide comments. And Aaliyah, if you can.
Hello, good evening. My name is Aaliyah Newbold. We flew in today from Orlando, so we appreciate your time and consideration. Regarding your question on the jobs, it would be fair to say at least we like to have targets that we are confident in meeting, and it is a full-time equivalent basis, so as far as we say heads and noses, it could be 120. It just depends on the mix of who we hire, whether they're truly working 35 hours a week versus somebody who needs a part-time job and is working 20 hours a week.
Okay. Any additional questions,
Well,
Mr. Silva?
It's what's to me, because I think later on it's indicated that we would have the ability to go check, correct?
Yeah.
But this is, the way I still read it is kind of like an unenforceable provision, because if they show you evidence that they have maintained one, or, I mean, this should be an extreme.
I think that we would be comfortable the actual reimbursement agreement would say at least 60 full-time
At least 60? Okay. That's good. I like that. And Marcela, the general question, the consultant that did the analysis, the gap analysis.
Yes.
Have they ever found in other projects that there is no gap?
Yes, if the project does not merit, they would indicate. That's why if you look at their report that they prepared, they look at obviously the construction cost. In certain cases, when they're purchasing property, they also look at that. It just depends on the project. And yes, we do. I mean, we have found that in certain projects there is
They come back and say
the financial gap doesn't exist. That's the reason why we have that company do that financial analysis, so that way, you know, we're just not hearing from the company or the proponent of the project that, you know, we need money. We have to reasonably see, and that financial gap has to be determined for that project, and this is why we have them review. And as you can see it from their report, they compare industry standards and look at, you know, even issues associated with just our area, and that's how they come up with their financial analysis.
Well, I have to say that for a long, long time, I think one of the two most recurring questions that would be asked around town is, one used to be, when do we get an In-N-Out? And that got resolved. And the next one is, when do we get an Olive Garden? So hopefully that'll be resolved. I think, you know, I to be honest with you, I kind of wrestled with the whole concept of providing assistance. You would think that a corporation as big as they are, that would not be necessary. But really what persuaded me more than anything is the report that we received earlier in terms of looking at this as an economic development project and looking at the plaza and how do we generate more traffic and the spillover effect that will have on other businesses.
Ms. Walker?
Ms. Biedra, could you repeat the numbers, please, as to the starting amount for projected fees to be paid?
When we initially looked at the project, when Darden first approached us, there was an estimated development impact fees, which includes building permit fees, utility fees, basically all the municipal fees, including also fees from other public agencies in order for them to operate. It was approximately $367,000. When in working with the company and also in looking at the fees some of the fees that were paid from the actual owner of the property, there were certain credits. There was also a review of city fees, and the amount came down to $133,000, which is just specific to the city of El Centro and what the city of El Centro is going to collect. The project as a whole, because they have to pay obviously fees to the IID, the gas company, and other local utility companies, it brings it to a total of $185,000. The city's ability to reimburse, basically, and this is in light of what has happened with redevelopment and the elimination of redevelopment, is our city is only in the legal position to be able to reimburse what it collects. So that's why you see that number. The gap that the project has is, in essence, in net present value, $208,000. So we were looking, when we were first looking at this project, we were actually looking at a much higher reimbursement. However, in obviously speaking to our attorney and looking at the ability for the city now, because it's not the redevelopment agency anymore, it's the city looking and evaluating these projects, we're limited on even the amount that we can reimburse to them. And that's why you see the $133,000, which is basically just what the city can collect for the project.
But Ms. Piedra, isn't it fair to say that we've already realized about a $234,000 reduction to the project proponent?
And there
from the start point.
And there is, and we realize that, and that is actually favorable for that site.
Right.
Otherwise, the reduction would, the project cost would have actually been greater.
If I may add, because there's pieces that we've got to work through this. Within your ordinance, it says that if, through an engineering process, they can show, this is the big numbers, reduced water and wastewater impact, they can reduce those costs. And that's where much of it came through. They went through an engineering process that was validated by our engineers. And by the way, our big boxes have done this also. The Best Buys went through that also. They were able to show that rather than taking the linear approach, which is in our capacity fees, they show that they're going to have lesser impact. That's what the big number was, the reduction. So what it was is, by them going through and showing that they're going to be utilizing much less with water-saving devices in their restaurant, that is what reduced it. So it wasn't that we gave it. They demonstrated, went to the extra effort to prove that they're going to have less of an impact. So we shouldn't charge them that. And I think that's where all of it. Then there was a credit from part of the building that's being proposed to demo. There is a credit in there from capacity fees that the owner has signed over to the proponent.
I also want to point out on page 2 of your report, Ms. Piedra, and just to clarify, Olive Garden would have anticipated paying fees in the range of $75,000 to $100,000 anyway.
That's what they usually
So the fact that we were looking for them to pay $133,000 is really pretty close to ballpark.
It's about close to what they're anticipating.
I too have struggled with this, and I think that I could fully support it if Olive Garden was going into an area where we need to jumpstart development. We don't need, in my mind, in my opinion, we don't need to jumpstart development in the area of the mall. You can go down there any day, any evening, and find the restaurants, the hotels, the stores, with lots of customers coming in and out. We heard today that we have got vacant buildings extraordinaire all up and down Imperial Avenue. And I would, in a heartbeat, support this project and the fee reimbursement if it was going onto Imperial Avenue, or if it was going downtown. But for us to take essentially $133,000 of taxpayer money, because this is, in my mind, a subsidy to a large national corporation to build in a high-traffic area, whereas the economy continues to improve, somebody's going to develop that site. Somebody's going to build. We're going to continue to see development in that area. So this is not the right time, in my mind, to be giving away taxpayer money to a national corporation in a high-traffic area. If you want to reevaluate and think about Imperial Avenue, reevaluate and think about downtown, I'll vote in favor of this. But as currently structured, Ms. Piedra, I don't think I can support the project.
And if I may allow Aaliyah with Darden to discuss the site evaluation process that they handled when they were looking at the El Centro trade area, because that way she can explain maybe what were some of the factors they considered.
Okay, and can I ask one more question?
Sure.
How much did we pay for the economic evaluation?
For the strategy?
For the Kaiser Marston report?
It was approximately $4,000.
And that was a cost borne by
Yes.
the city?
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to provide additional information. Darden they are actually in all 50 states. So this particular site is competing with development across the country, not necessarily your neighbors or other California sites. They have a fixed capital budget each year, and we work with local communities if there are excessive costs. This particular trade area is a little bit smaller than what Darden is used to. There are additional costs outside of the actual permanent impact fee. For example, the demolition fee of about $60,000 that caught the attention of Darden when we work on the financial model to decide whether to go or no go for this site. Currently, the stage of the process is they are waiting on the impact of this meeting to make any formal decision whether to come to your community. From a site selection process, they're extremely selective and extremely patient. They have a tried and true model where they have to be on that high visible corner, so they would never go one parcel back on Dannenberg and be blocked by the existing structure that's there. I think that existing structure has also been vacant for at least 2.5 years, and Mr. Russ views bringing Olive Garden in will actually fill up the existing vacant space, and he is currently in discussions with other tenants depending on whether Olive Garden does move forward. They did look at other lots at the mall. They would never go behind the mall because, again, it's a visibility issue. They are actually prohibited based on an Italian exclusive that existing restaurant has from going on a mall out parcel that's existing vacant. So they're extremely selective. If this particular corner was not available, they would go to a corner in Atlanta, Georgia, for example. That's where you are competing and where the fees are lower. There's less risk of they still look at the numbers when coming from Orlando to look at the high unemployment, and it's more expensive to build here. It's just higher cost. We looked at it kind of from a prevailing wage issue, but the construction costs are higher here. And we worked with, and it's not unlike other communities, to get creative. How can we partner with the community to bring usually the number one requested restaurant here, Olive Garden, which does about double the sales of any surrounding competitor. The surrounding restaurants do about $2 million. Darden is projecting to do at least $4 million, so we do think it increases the pie. We can't tell you that there's no shifting, but with their national advertising campaign, it tends to drive more people to eat out more, and I think it will drive traffic across the border, and people will stay here. They will crave Olive Garden, and then they'll go shopping, and then also they'll go shopping, and then they'll want to eat at the Olive Garden before they go back home. So hopefully that gives you a little feel in their site selection. And then unfortunately, they're not the company that comes to an area that needs redevelopment. They need to have that high traffic before they come in. They actually wouldn't look at the Cole Shopping Center because it's not in that retail main focal point. And again, they're looking across the country. And they would be very patient. They did look at the other corners at Dogwood, and the parcels were just too large. They would have to buy 14 acres, and they need usually less than 2 acres. So they did look to see, was there a site that we wouldn't necessarily have to demo. But if they went to a currently vacant site and it had the $400,000 of fees, it would be cost prohibitive to coming. And so that's why we worked so closely and creatively with the community to hopefully bring an Olive Garden here.
Okay. Any additional questions, Mr. Silva?
Somewhere on, I try to go back and find it, but there's a, when you describe the company, somewhere there I recall reading something where you say that you try to work with local subcontractors.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about that, please?
They do not have a national construction team that goes to every site. Each site will be locally bid, and they can give preference to local subcontractors. All things qualifications being equal. If you say I will only use local, then it takes a competitive bidding process out. We've learned the hard way that when we've done that, it drives up the cost significantly. We haven't gone out for bid on the site, but if you think about it from Darden's perspective, they want to use local. They want that local electrician because if something happens with the HVC unit, we're from Florida, but it's even hot here today for us when we landed. The AC unit breaks, you don't stay and you won't eat. They need that electrician and the HVAC or the roofer if there's a leak to be there immediately. So it makes sense from a business perspective as well to use local.
Mr. Jackson?
When you say you can give preference to local, I guess I'm struggling with this too, and I'm looking for something to make me want to vote for this. If you were to insert that language where, and I'm not sure, working with the city staff.
We have some creative language we've used in other communities, and if there's a local, one community in Birmingham, Alabama, we had a local city contact that actually worked with the bidding process to make sure they drove local bids to come in. And we can put some creative language. Again, we don't want to take the competitive bidding process out, but all else being equal, they will give preference to local if the qualifications are there.
I think if that's something that you would adhere to with staff and you would put that language in there, that would make me feel a little bit more comfortable with it because we're trying to stimulate local jobs, and that's obviously an issue here. So if that component is there, then I could probably support this.
We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Is there,
Mr. Solomon?
what was the main reason for locating an Olive Garden in El Centro?
Versus one of the other concepts, Red Lobster or Longhorn, or is that your question, whether a different concept, or why did Darden bring a concept to El Centro? They noticed that it has no financial impact to a neighboring Olive Garden because they noticed that this is an area of the country that could use an Olive Garden.
Okay, what I was looking at was...
As well as the Mexicalias coming over and their strong retail sales.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Is it the number of people?
I'll read to you straight from their report that goes out. The reason they like this intersection is the number one retail intersection in El Centro. The market has a similar size as a location in Yuma, I think. And then there's limited casual dining competition for the Olive Garden. But there are concerns being kind of a largely seasonal agricultural jobs and high unemployment rate. It's a smaller market, but they recognize the number of people. Over 1 million people live in Mexicali and use El Centro as their shopping destination. And I quote.
Okay. Are there any additional questions?
So the representation that you're making is if the council doesn't go along with the $133,000 agreement that Olive Garden will not locate in El
It
Centro.
hasn't been through the final approval process. We know what the numbers from a financial standpoint need to be approved, but I can't tell you for sure yes or no. We would, if it for some reason didn't get approved, we would put that in there and it would kind of go up the chain for approval, but generally we know what it does take to get approved. But it hasn't gone through the approval process, say, okay, this number has to be this, or we're not necessarily coming. But I can tell you once it does get rejected, then it will be 5+ years before they'll come to this area, look at another site, see if the site's still available, and circle back. They They have a fixed capital budget each year, and if you think about it from Darden's standpoint, the sites with the highest return get their priority. We're working on sites of over 200, and they'll only build between 70 and 80 a year. And this is public information that they report to their shareholders. And
Any
sites
additional-
coming on and off our listing weekly.
Any additional questions or concerns or heartburn as it relates to the issue?
And if
No
it helps,
pun, no
we did
pun
bring
intended.
Olive Garden mints as a little sweetener.
Well, I was going to say, no pun intended about the heartburn.
We couldn't bring the fresh breadsticks because there wasn't a local area.
Okay. In looking at this, I understand my colleagues' concern, but I don't share them. So with that in mind, I would be inclined to vote for approval pending the making sure that we would take into consideration the amendments, and that is maintaining at least 60 new full-time equivalents. Excuse me, maybe I'm allergic to something. I understand the benefit from the Russ Group. There was some things there. I remember when Mr. Russ came before us and talked about this, and we were looking at ways to try to make sure that the issue really did move forward. I mean, the plaza. Why you selected that place, I'm going to assume it's your marketing strategy, location, location, location. I like to think that El Centro is a good location. I believe the Olive Garden will attract a lot of individuals. There will be a great deal of interest. And I think you will probably meet the goal that you've established for yourselves as far as that kinds of returns you anticipate will be forthcoming. Having said, there was another amendment, I think, that
Yes,
was
for
put
preference.
for preference, and
Local
that
preference.
with everything being equal for the preference. And I think we want to, yes, as far as qualifications and all the other aspects of that.
Price, we obviously don't want to.
But we want to make sure you can do this with a competitive process. But at the same time, if that is going to encompass local individuals, we would certainly hope you would lean in that direction.
I guess I'd like to clarify that, too.
Okay, you have another point you want to make, Mr. Jackson?
Regarding the local hire and the language, could you give me an example of what that language, not holding it to you right now, but
Marcella, did you write something down there too, or were you just making note that that may be a possibility?
because oftentimes we
Okay.
hear that companies are going to come in and they're going to do everything they can, quote unquote, to hire local, and then we approve a project, and then we're lucky if we see one local contractor. I realize, being fair, everything's got to be equal, but what provisions would you put in place to maybe give a local contractor a little bit of an edge against somebody else being equal?
Well, generally, we would look at their qualifications and then maybe a certain percentage of price, and then we'd have to look at them kind of all together, because if all of them were within 5%, you add them all up, then we're all, then it could be a bigger number in total. But then we'll also could give them the opportunity to repropose if they wanted to match a certain price, if everything else being equal, and then they didn't quite match that price.
So an RFQ instead of an RFP?
Right.
And maybe a 5%
We'll have to kind of
preference.
work
Well,
through the
yeah.
percentages with Darden's construction
I
team.
I think we want to make sure that Darden has the flexibility, but we don't want to lose sight of the council's interest.
I just want the commitment there.
Yeah.
And if the commitment's there, then I'm okay with it. But I don't want there to be, I don't want to just be lip service, which we tend to get a lot.
So in other communities, and again, we've worked on local where they've assigned someone and
You mean
worked closely with the
to-
construction
okay.
team to make sure they funneled, as well as
Okay,
posting the job qualifications. So there's
Well-
a posting will help the local, that they are made available of the opportunity, as well as just helping kind of scan the qualifications, because there could be individuals that the city's worked with that they could
Mhm.
provide recommendations for. And
Or give you a list of certain ones.
yes,
Okay, yeah.
versus a preference.
We
Yeah.
have listings of companies that are licensed with us.
Yes,
we certainly
but
provide. I think an important aspect of it, because this is not a city project, they have that flexibility to, for example, allowing people to adjust their bids. And again,
Yes.
this is a privately funded project, which I think having a good, strong language in that, and of course, coming to what's needed here is we would like to have direct action by the council saying, yes, go out and develop this, for us to develop the agreement to bring back to you.
Well, I think that could be something that we could add. We don't have an motion on the floor.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to...
Can I ask one
Sure.
more question?
Yes, Ms. Walker.
We have a number of restaurants that are down in that area right now, national chains. Did a single one of them come and ask for the city for a reimbursement agreement? Okay, so by this policy decision, if we have other restaurants or companies that want to locate in a high-traffic area, then we're essentially saying, as a policy, that the city will consider, again, donating taxpayer money to large companies in that area. Donating my word, but essentially that's what we're doing.
To clarify that, that's the reason why we go through a financial review by a consultant that does the financial analysis, so that we do not get into a situation where it's a gift of public funds. In the analysis specifically for this project, and just like we have handled other projects, again, with the difference being that we were doing it through redevelopment, and we were going through the same process too, because we didn't want to run into the gift of public fund situation where you're giving funds to a company or any business, whether it's a locally owned business or a national company. We don't want to have that problem. If Kaiser Marston would have come back and say, you know what, city, there's no gap here, then you wouldn't even be seeing this report, because there's no financial gap. In the other situation, perhaps with the other restaurants that we had in town, they maybe did not realize that financial gap, or for other reasons. It's not uncommon for us to be approached with this type of request. We do it in different forms. For example, in support of the Chelsea project and also the El Centro Town Center, we go after grants to be able to assist with offsite and other different requirements that the city has. And so under no circumstance will staff present to you a project that does not have that financial gap. And we wouldn't present you any project that would represent a gift of public funds.
How much do we give is it Desirado Plaza or the
Honda dealership?
The Honda dealership, we actually assisted them with the undergrounding of the canal around, it was less than $600,000.
And the Ford dealership, do you recall that one?
That was about, if my memory serves me right, it was about $400,000. The difference being here that with those type of agreements, they were for 10 years. And before, with redevelopment law, we could extend it that long. Now you're seeing a different situation, again, with the changes that we're seeing with the elimination of redevelopment.
So the new laws only allow for 3 years?
It has to be very short term.
Because we don't have RDA anymore. But what I was wondering, Mrs. Biedler, if you or Mr. Duran may recall, during the time that the mall actually opened, there was a lot of dollars that went into public dollars. But the tri-party agreement was one. I'm not quite sure if, in fact, they were working with, what's the mall owner?
CBL.
CBL, as it related to their bringing in those particular hospitality houses on the frontage there of, I think some of those aspects may have taken place. Do you recall, Mr. Duran?
Well, there were no direct expenditures onto the property, because that avoided them different circumstances with prevailing wage. It was and I'm going from memory on this one, and Council, approximately $9 million was put into the road work at the mall. This is before Commons, and this is before Plaza. So all that widening.
No, but I mean, just for that, Mrs. Villacana, do you recall anything? I don't know that we, the city, were actually asked to participate. That's the question that Mrs. Walker had, and I don't think we were. But I think the participation came from CBL.
From the developer.
From the developer itself. And then, because we had already made quite a substantial investment in all the infrastructure.
That's correct.
But first, let's see if there, do you have a question?
No, I was ready to move.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Solomon, any questions?
No, I think by having an Olive Garden, it does a couple of things for us. First of all, it allows us to have a name restaurant that is known throughout California as high quality, good service, excellent food. In addition to that, it's put in a location where there are other outlets that have their own reputation. It makes for a place if you want to go out and eat. There are several nice places in the same area where you can have your pick. If you're staying at one of the hotels there, it's much easier just to walk across and have your own pick as to what you might want to have to eat. In addition to that, it allows people, as the lady said earlier, after they finish eating or before they've eaten, to just walk over to the mall. I think in the long run, we get whatever we put out, we can get it back. And one of the ways to do this is to look at it. Sometimes you have to spend a little money to make a little money. And with the economy the way that it is, anything that we can do to bring residents throughout the Imperial Valley into the mall there for whatever purpose, I think that we need to lay down the groundwork and do it. So I'm for it.
Okay. Any additional questions?
I would move to approve staff recommendation with the two amendments, that the language be changed to at least 60 full-time employees, and then the direction that Darden will work with city staff on developing local preference for local hire in construction and development of your property.
I second.
Okay. It's been moved by Jackson, second by Solomon. I'd like to make a statement to the motion. I think the heartburn that may have been surfacing, and no pun intended regarding the, is looking at a way to finesse this project and make it something that's doable and yet beneficial. Doable for Darden and beneficial to this community. The jobs in and of itself would be a benefit, and the opportunity for local hires is another great benefit. I think it will demonstrate that this council is looking very proactively at how we can continue to attract economic development, and job creation is one, and the second piece is how do we then, by extension, offer that same opportunity to the individuals here as far as local hires. So if there's nothing else, all in favor, let it be known by your usual sign of voting, and that is aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No.
Okay, the motion carries with 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Becker has asked at this time to be excused before we go into the budget. Ms. Becker? Thank you very much. She has, you want to be excused as well? Okay. Hopefully you found this exciting for you. These young men are going to get merit badges in what, please, civic and citizenship in the community. Okay. Thank you very much.
I used to be a constable for that.
Marcel, any time frame from this point forward?
When do we think we'll have the agreement?
30 days, okay.
Yeah, as soon as we have the
Ladies,
agreement
would you like to stay, or are you going to be excused as well? Well, that was 9 o'clock. Oh, 6 a.m., that's 3 a.m. Oh, my gosh. Okay. You've been up for a while. Did you fly into Imperial or into San Diego and drove down? Oh, great. We're so glad to see you. Well, then you noticed there's some construction. So the next time you come out, that will be all improved. Okay, well, that's it. And you're going to eat at the Olive Garden when it's no. All right. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Salcido. We're going to be hearing now a presentation on the annual budget, specifically the enterprise and special revenue capital projects. I'm sorry for the lateness of the hour, Ms. Salcido. Thank you.
It doesn't work. Ah, there.
Getting warm in here.
Oh, no,
Warm
the
in
air
here.
conditioner will come on in a minute. It goes.
It did.
It got hot because you couldn't believe it.
Casey's probably on a timer.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is that good or what? Surprised that they agreed to this. I think so.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and council members. Welcome to our second budget workshop of the year for fiscal year 2013. Today we'll be going over the enterprise funds, special revenue funds, and then the construction project funds. Need to get used to the setup. With regards to the enterprise funds, which are the first funds that we'll go over, the enterprise funds are used to account for operations that are financed and operated in a manner similar to a private business enterprise. Two of the major funds that we have under enterprise are the water and wastewater funds. With regards to the water fund, we're projecting revenues of approximately $8.1 million, $8.2 million, which is pretty much in line with the same level of revenues as this year. That has been the average over the past 4 years, and we're also projecting that dollar amount for next year in revenues. With regards to rate increases, there was no rate increase in fiscal year 2012, and the last rate increase was in July of 2009, and the percentage was 4%. From 305 to 317 per 1,000 gallons. With regards to water working capital, we're projecting to begin, let me see how this works. We're projecting to begin the fiscal year with $8.8 million in working capital for the water fund. We're projecting operating revenues of $8.2 million, then expenditures of $5.2 for a net of $2.9 million. When we add that to the beginning capital of $8.7 million, that means that we end with net revenues before non-operating expenditures and revenues of $11.7 million. Out of the $11.7 million, we still have to pay $2.2 million in debt service for our bonds, $4.2 million for capital expenditures, and then $120,000 is going out towards GASB 45, the other post-employment benefits. We're transferring in $1 million from capacity fees to help with the capital expenditures of $4.2 million. So we're basically paying out $5.6 million and ending the year at 6.2 in capital. The $6.2 million in capital, we're designating, reserving per our own city's financial policy. We're allocating that three ways. We're reserving 10% for economic unknowns. That's the $521,000 at the top. We're reserving, designating for accrued leave liability $200,000. Our current liability within the water fund is $200,000, so we're right on target for that. And then we're also designating an amount for vehicle and major equipment replacement of $3.8 million. Now, this amount right here, normally we try to designate sufficient funds to be able to total the same amount of depreciation. In other words, we want to build up to an amount to be able to replace the total fleet value, which is $4.3 million. So with regards to water, we have the full amount, the full $3.8 million designated for that endeavor. When we deduct that from our total working capital, that means that we end with an undesignated, unreserved working capital of $1.7 million. Now, $1.7 million is somewhat low. it is not sufficient to cover unforeseen circumstances. For example, the earthquake of 2010, Labrucherie tank, there was damages to that tank, and the
Text message received.
the
Sorry.
the estimated expenditures for that was $1.4 million. So 1.6 million in undesignated to cover an unforeseen expenditure like that, it would wipe out the fund balance, the working capital within the water fund. So it is somewhat a concern at this point in time. And the recommendation is that we need to build up revenues enough to be able to absorb, to be able to build up this undesignated amount, and to be able to build up our reserves to be able to absorb any unforeseen circumstances, any capital improvements that we need to make in the future.
Yes, sure. Mr. Silva, he's going to...
Can you go back to this part, please? Is there any value, strategic value, accounting value, or some value that of designating unreserved 1.6 million versus the 10% reserve? I thought it almost sounds like they're the same thing to me.
Our own financial policy 301 calls for at least a minimum of 10% for economic unknowns. That could be a downturn in our revenues. More earthquake. However, as you see, the 10%, 521,000 is really low. And I'll give you as an example I gave you as an example the earthquake. And that's not to prevent us from designating an additional amount. So we could increase that 10%, because that 10% is the minimum.
Right,
so
yeah.
we could, yes, I think
I mean, what's the purpose of not just lumping that into reserve for
what I did
economic
is at this
concerns?
point in time, I put only 10%, because that's what the policy, our own city policy calls for, at least a minimum of 10% for undesignated. And then I left the other amount as undesignated and reserved. However, nothing prevents the city from allocating a higher amount up at the top for economic unknowns, which is a good idea. For example, the earthquake, it wiped out pretty much.
I mean, I can see where that has to be a very healthy reserve. I just don't see, because to me, both of those purposes are the same.
Right.
Undesignated and economic uncertainties.
So, for example, the water tank, we would have started with the 10% reserve, but that would have not been sufficient. The cost was $1.4
But I think he's talking about the terminology, Mrs. Salcido, the terminology. What is they're synonymous?
Undesignated means you pretty much can
use it anywhere.
Or use it anyway, yes.
Okay, reserves and reserves?
Well, if I may assist in this, the reason for the undesignated reserve is because your policy calls for 10%. One of the things that should come out of over this next fiscal year is revisiting that policy. I think a number of you may have read the articles on reserves in the Union Tribune. Most of the cities are going for minimums of 15%. And now that they've experienced, and there's some stability in the economy, actually some cities are up at 50, 80%, but the idea is going to a minimum of 15, and that was the Standard & Poor's comment in that article. It was 2 days ago. So that's why it's designated, undesignated. If you designate it to go into the reserve, that's where we'll put it. But you need to know what's not designated.
The reserves is more like a lockbox.
The reserve, your reserves, your working capital is your total amount of money available. Out of that, you have designated an amount for unforeseen circumstances. You have designated an amount for a potential accrued leave liability. So you have designated, I'm going to use it for this, I'm going to use it for this. However, this amount, the $1.6 million at the end, hasn't been designated for anything else. However, we can increase some of the other amounts at the top.
Right.
Or leave it as is for anything that might come up.
Mr. Jackson?
I guess maybe an easier way to say it is the reserve is encumbered funds that can only be used for, a specific thing, and your undesignated reserve is unencumbered, we could use it for anything we want.
Anything you want, exactly.
Which also include allow you to, you could move that into areas that you said, well, we want to have a larger reserve because water plants are more expensive to replace, so the 10% doesn't work for us anymore. Where in the general fund, it's predominantly personnel costs. In the water plant, it's predominantly equipment costs. So that's why your policy may require some adjustment. And that's why we're going to need some direction of what do you want, or if anything, to do with that 1.6.
Okay. Any additional questions on that page? No. Okay. Ms. Salcedo, please proceed.
The other major fund within the enterprise is the wastewater. We have two significant issues within the wastewater fund, and number one is that the major upgrades being performed, approximately $16.7 million in upgrades, of which 16.5, the majority of it is out of the 2006 bonds. And then, as you will see in the next slide, one of the concerns, we have a concern here, is the low level of working capital within the wastewater fund. With regards to revenues for wastewater, we're projecting approximately $7.5 million, pretty much in line with the same level of revenues as this year. Again, 7.5, 7.6 has been the average over the past 3 years. There has been no rate increase for the wastewater fund. For wastewater, no rate increase in fiscal year 2012, and the last one, same year as the water fund, 2009, the increase of 4%. With regards to working capital for the wastewater fund, we're beginning the year with $368,000. Projected revenue, $7.5 million. $7.5 million, and then operating expenses of 4.3, giving us a working capital before non-operating revenues and expenditures of $3.5 million. Out of the $3.5 million, we're paying out in debt service $2.5. Capital expenditures of $16.7 million being spent on that, and then an OPEB transfer of $120,000. However, we're also getting revenues, non-operating revenues, bond proceeds, $16.5 million to help us with our capital expenditures. Then also $225,000 from capacity fees for our capital expenditures. So overall, spending $2.7 million out of the $3.5 that we had available, leaving us with a total working capital of $850,000 projected at June 30 of 2013.
Mr. Solomon has a question, Ms. Salcedo.
Yes.
This does not include the money that we're talking about with the increase in the water?
No. No,
Okay,
this is
so
as is.
Where would that fall in to this?
An increase in revenues to be able to build up those reserves at the end, to be able to, and you see on the next slide, some of those designations are pretty low with regards to our own policy.
Mayor, Council Member, if you look at line 2 of on the screen, projected operating revenue, that is where any increase would show up from an increase in rates. In the water slide, it's the same line. The projected operating revenue is where the increase in the rate would occur.
Well, but it doesn't, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Solomon, please.
How much are we anticipating that rate increase to be?
It's on your council report, 400,000, right? Mm-hmm. 400,000 each.
So approximately $400,000 would be the impact.
I know one was higher than the other one, 500,000 for the other one. 400 for water, 500
I think it's 400 for water, 500. If the full rate was in place for a full year, I think it's 500 for wastewater, 400 on the water.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Silva.
What type of capital projects do we have planned for the wastewater plant for this year?
I have a slide ahead where I break it down what the capital will be for both the water and wastewater. So total working capital of $850,000. Then the designations For that, the minimum 10%. So we're able to meet that. That's for 134,000 out of the 850. Then 200,000 for the accrued leave liability, right on target. Our liability is 221,000. But then when we get to vehicle, a designation for vehicle and major equipment, there's only $215,000 available, where we should be more in line with the $1.6 million to be able to build up to what, be able to replace the capital, which is $2.2 million in our fleet value. Total expenditures, total designations of $850,000, leaving no undesignated, unreserved for any emergencies. As an example, we also had some repairs some 2 years ago, sinkholes during the year that we had to repair. The approximate cost of that was $1.3 million. So being in this situation where we have no undesignated or no, the 10%, if it was sinkholes comparable to what we had 2 years ago, $1.3 million, and we only have $400,000 for those unforeseen circumstances. So this is something of a challenge, and it's a concern that needs to be addressed. With regards to the enterprise funds, in summary, total expenditures is $35.6 million, 9.6 for operations, $4.8 million for the debt service, the transfer for other post-employment benefits, and $21 million in capital. Capital for water, we have $4.2 million, and these are the, this is a breakdown. Major one being the $3 million being to be spent for the repair of storage tanks 1 and 3, $1 million for the Elder water line, water meters, with the rest of it going to towards water meters, and then equipment and software. With regards to wastewater, $16.8 million, of which 16.5 is coming from the 2006 bonds. Major capital expenditures for next year, $8 million for the southern pump station, $3 million for the replacement of sewer lines, 1.5 for the East Main sewer line, $1 million for the, it's a combination, the main entrance fence, and then some earthquake repairs. $2 million to relocate Pump Station 2 and the bar screen at $1 million, with the rest of it towards truck, software, and equipment.
What's a bar screen?
What's the bar screen?
Yeah, what's the bar screen?
Bar screen.
At the headworks, at the sewer plant, there's a screen that gets out any large things flowing through. Cardboard, boards, 2x4s. It's amazing what comes to that system. Randy, that pretty much sums it up?
So debris. It's a lot of debris. It catches all
And it
the
catches it,
debris.
and there's a machine that actually pulls it up and it puts it into a dumpster.
And the reason for having to relocate pump station number 2?
That's for the extension of Imperial Avenue over the freeway.
Yeah, it's, we have to move the pump down to Wake Avenue so that when the interchange comes in from Imperial, there's room for the ramps, because right now it's sitting at the foot of the current
It
bridge.
seems to me, didn't we have a discussion about this several years ago, about the loop and all the work that we were doing?
This is
So-
on the Imperial Avenue.
Oh, on Imperial. I thought you were saying
This is Imperial
Dogwood.
Avenue.
Okay, we had that discussion on Dogwood and that bridge. Okay. All right, I'm sorry, Ms. Salcedo, please.
Yes, so that was a summary of the capital expenditures within the enterprise funds. With regards to staffing requests, we had 2 requests under the for the wastewater treatment plant, and that's the one for the compliance specialist at a cost of $66,000, and then for a staff assistant at a cost of $59,000. That concludes the presentation for enterprise funds. Then we have our special revenue funds. These are revenues that are restricted to a specific project or activity. It's either from a grant and it's for a specific purpose. The total amount budgeted under special revenue is $22.2 million. And for special revenues, we are beginning the year with $34.7 million in fund balance. Then projecting operating revenues of $16 million, and then operating expenditures of $1.8, leaving us with a fund balance before non-operating revenues and expenditures of $48 million. Out of that, we have an allocation for loans of $2.7 million, capital expenditures of $15 million, and then transfers out of $2.5 million. The transfer out is $1.2 million to the general fund for street activities, and the rest of it is for the debt service for the LTA bonds. Total fund balance at the end of the year projected to be $28.5 million, so a decline from $34 million to $28. However, this is a good thing because that means that projects are being completed and we're spending those grant monies or those monies in the special revenue funds. With regards to construction project funds, construction project funds are used to account for the acquisition and construction of major capital facilities. We are allocating $3.7 million out of these funds, and it looks as follows. For construction project funds, we are projecting a beginning fund balance of $1.4 million. Then operating revenues of $3.7 million to be spent pretty much all during the year. We have capital expenditures of $3.8 million during the year, leaving $1.4 at the end of the year out of construction project funds. Again, a good thing. We're accomplishing finishing projects during the year. As a summary, special revenue and construction project funds, total expenditures $26 million, with $1.8 million for operations. We have $2.8 million for loans. We have $1.4 allocated for debt service for our bonds, $1.2 million for streets, that's a transfer out, and $18.8 million in capital. Now, with regards to capital, the $18.8 million, the majority, or half of it, $9.7 million, is going out is being allocated for street improvements and construction. $4 million for the 8th Street project, $1.4 million Waterman Avenue extensions. Then we have the North Dade Underground, I-8 SR 86, the beautification project, La Boucherie widening, and then Bradshaw and Imperial projects. We have also public works projects, $4.5 million, of which the majority of it will be allocated towards the 7th and State, the bus terminal. Then we have 2 projects under Parks and Recreation for a total out of special revenue and capital projects funds of $3.7 million. And those 2 projects are the Sports Pavilion and the Skate Park, BMX Park / BMX.
The $2.4 million is in addition to the amount that we received by way of a grant?
That is the grant.
That is the grant.
Yeah, this is again, under special revenues. Much of that is grants or, yeah, they're special designated.
It's not an additional sum. Got it.
And the 1.3 is from this special. There's additional funds that come from the successor agency is also having other monies coming in for the sports pavilion.
Okay.
Then the last category is under administration and other departments, $894,000 allocated, the majority of it going allocated towards the council chambers for ADA compliance, the construction, and then $169,000 for the library. It's a combination of a collection, computers, some furniture, and $200,000 for the shade structure, and $150,000 for patrol vehicles. So in summary, $18.8 million being spent out of capital projects and special revenue funds. These expenditures, these projects will address the various aspects of the strategic planning document that's in place for the city. It addresses under public works street improvements, $9.7 million. It addresses additional recreational facilities, and then housing through loans. We're moving forward. We're completing projects, and that is reflected in next year's budget as well.
Okay. Are any additional questions for Ms. Salcido? regarding the enterprise fund. Mr. Jackson?
Letitia, the request from planning to fund the assistant planner position, does that fall within this?
To fund the, which one?
That's general fund.
That's general fund.
Okay.
Which position was it? I'm sorry.
The
I didn't-
assistant planner.
Oh, that's general fund,
General fund. I
yes.
just want to make, okay, just want to make sure.
Any additional questions? No. Okay. No direction you want to give to Ms. Salcido or Mr. Duran?
But this will be part of the package coming back at first meeting of June with a recommended budget that's developed with Ms. Salcido and I.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Salcido, for your efforts and you and your staff.
Thank you.
We have informational items 20, 21, and 22. There's nothing to come before the successor agency and the redevelopment agency. There's nothing to come before us for the housing agency. There's public comments. Anyone in the public wishing to come forward to address the council on any item that was not on the council's agenda may do so at this time. Seeing no one come forward, I think the council, we already had our recess. Any task force reports? Hearing none. Mayors and council members report. Do you have anything to report, Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Jackson?
If you could come back to me, I'm missing a paper here.
You're missing something, okay. Mr. Silva, you have anything to report?
Just a couple of things. This is going to be a very hectic but enjoyable weekend for me. Friday night, I'm a founding member of the ROP Community Foundation, which raises money for scholarships, and we're hosting our 5th annual Dancing with the Stars Gala, and 3 alumni dancers are sitting on this side of the table, and maybe we'll get some others in the near future. But that's a wonderful event that sold out 3 weeks ago. It is really the hottest ticket in town, and I look forward to that. And then Saturday, Cinco de Mayo, again, I want to, speaking of cultural events, hopefully I will see some of you join me at the Cinco de Mayo concert at Southwest High School.
Ms. Walker?
Just want to, again, kudos to staff for the music festival and fireworks in Starkfield. It was exceptionally well done. A lot of fun for everybody that was there. Ms. Becker's children, I think, in particular, had a phenomenal time. So great job.
Mr. Jackson, did you find your paper?
No, but I will just go ahead and report that I attended the Film Forward put on by Sundance last night at Cinemark, the first part of that, an Australian independent film. Sundance actually brought in the director of that film all the way from Australia to present her film. As we speak, I think the documentary on the Horse Whisperer is going on over at the Stockman's Club, and I think there's other performances at the Q and around the Valley. I would strongly encourage people to try to attend that. They're all free. It's quite a... It says something for our local film commission. Mr. Solomon and I sit on here, and our director, Charlotte Teeters, that Sundance actually selected Imperial County for one of the 9 locations to bring this Film Forward festival out. So certainly the local participation and support is needed to hopefully see a reoccurrence of this event come to the Valley. So I know there's some workshops this weekend, and I was going to announce them, but I can't find what that paper is. But it is in the newspaper, and there is a website, but there is some free workshops for people that are looking to become screenwriters, directors, cinematography. They actually are bringing in directors from LA and around. Some of them are local, and they're going to be teaching those classes for free. So certainly encourage some of our youth that are looking to get into that industry to participate.
Thank you. I want to announce the prayer breakfast upcoming for Thursday, May the 3rd, 7 a.m. Life is fragile. We encourage you to handle it with prayer. It's sponsored by the Salvation Army and with a host of other service clubs. It starts at 7 a.m. It'll be at the Desert Trails RV Park over on Wake Avenue. I did attend the League of Cities meeting on last week, along with Legislative Action Days. I was surprised it was sparsely attended. I will have a more complete report for you at our next meeting. Sparsely attended for Ledge Actions Days, even more sparsely attended for the board meeting. So I don't know what that means, except maybe everybody's just tired. 2 weeks ago, I announced that I was forming a task force to look at issues that were and concerns that were happening in public safety, specifically the fire department. That was Ms. Walker and Mr. Solomon. That ad hoc committee has made a recommendation that we engage the services of an independent consultant to work with them on that. Once that work is complete, he or she will report back to Ms. Walker and Mr. Solomon, which in turn then will report to the council. Is there anything else to come before this body, Mr. Duran?
I don't think so.
Is there anything else to come?